Alright, YouTube, I'm going to confess it's been a little bit more than just a moment while I got some water. I actually had a meal instead, so I've rested my voice a little bit and I'm ready. I'd like to do the back half, but it's not the back half, we're not halfway yet. Either way, we're on to the DPS heroes now. And we are starting with Ashe. So Ashe is the minor perk Rapid Fire. Unscoped shots gain 30% increased attack speed, but deal 15% less damage. When you look at this again on paper, you might be just like, oh, this is straight up buff. I actually quite like this. It's kind of an interesting design choice because what this enables you to potentially do is if, like, you were dove, for example, by some sort of dive hero, Winston's, Genji's, that type of thing, is you could just rapidly, before your inevitable death, just unload everything as quickly as humanly possible. You do less damage during it, but if you can get your entire clip out, overall you will do more damage in the process. But it gives you the possibility of get all these shots out as quickly as possible. Maybe it causes you to trade with someone else. So I actually think there are reasons to take rapid fire versus not taking rapid fire. There are certain circumstances where it's going to be bad, and certain circumstances where it's going to be good. Therefore, I think because of my, my reason behind the designing of the perks, I think it's actually quite a cool concept. Also, and actually, I nearly forgot to mention this, one of the nice things about this is if you're a little bit maybe less skilled, a la me, maybe you hit a lucky headshot, I'll just call it a lucky headshot, and you leave someone on like 1 or 2 health, you can just rapid fire and try and pick up a kill. A bit like Widows do sometimes when they hit a headshot but it's not fully charged, and it leaves them on like 5 health, and they'll use the SMG mode of the Widow's Kiss just to pick up the kill. Maybe you use rapid fire as that type of deal for Ashe. So I think there's some intrigue in this. I certainly think it fits the bill of a minor perk. So I'm giving it 4 stars in design. In terms of quality, I think it's actually quite weak, but not terrible. You can never get around the idea, though, with this, and it's kind of like the big issue, obviously. Reload is... Ashe has classically had this really, really long reload animation. It doesn't get around that. In fact, it just pushes you towards the reload animation faster. So it really is this, I'm going to unload everything. Or unloash. The mix between unload and unleash. The unloash. You unloash everything into someone just before you perish. It is kind of defeatist as well, so I think it's a little bit weak, but maybe situationally, that's fine. Maybe situationally, except at some point I'm going to get got, but I'm going to get someone in the process, and that will mean my team wins the fight. So maybe I'm underestimating it a little bit. We also have Sidewinder. The Coach Gun pushes Ashe and nearby enemies 20% farther. It's basically just a buff to Coach Gun, so I kind of don't like it in some degrees on the design aspect, because it kind of feels like it's just... It doesn't change the hero too much. It's just a slight, I say slight, it's actually a pretty big buff to the kit. What I will say is it does change in the slightest of ways, that you might use the Coach Gun to go for eliminations and boop kills instead of on certain maps. So I've given it the benefit of the doubt, and I've given it 2 design stars and 3 quality. I actually think it's pretty obnoxious. Coach Gun is one of those things that not only can you use it to disengage a dive, you can, and by disengage I mean you physically move away from the diving targets, you can at the same time move them away from you as well. So I see that again as what Ashe is going to be doing with this. You might be stood on the back, the high ground on Blizzard World first point. Winston tries to dive up to you on that high ground, and you just blast his ass back into, the spawn room with your Sidewinder. I will say you have to be very careful with his ability, because I imagine some people are going to get caught out by it and just blast themselves off the map with it instead. But generally speaking, I think it's a pretty good buff. I mean, for a minor, it's a bit boring in my opinion, but it's solid. For the mages, she has Viper's Sting. Hitting 2 consecutive scoped shots on a target deals 25 extra damage and reloads 2 ammo. I'm going to be honest with you, I kind of hate this, but I understand. So, to work out where this is coming from, Ashe's aim down sight damage is 75 damage, non-crit, just 75 damage. Therefore, quick maths, headshots are going to do 150 damage, which means if you headshot and then body shot a squishy, you're doing 225 damage. Most of the squishy heroes sit at about 250 damage, so this extra 25 damage means you can headshot, body shot 250 or lower health squishy targets, and it's lethal. So it does change the way you play the game. I have to concede that. You don't need to go for headshot. Headshot, body shot now gets the kill, so it changes the way your aim style will work with Ashe. You get that headshot, you usually need to go for a body shot, get a more consistent shot. What I will say about this is you normally hit the dynamite as well in part of this combo as well, so maybe that is not really a full, true, a truth about how you would use Ashe's kit. You kind of need to account for this damage. And I think that because of that, the other thing this means that, like, as a side effect that happens is Ashe sort of becomes a bit of a tank buster now, where she's quite good at hitting shots on a tank because, you know, they are big, bulky lads. She's probably likely to hit 2 consecutive shots. And again, it's not headshots, it's just scoped shots. Which means if you're like a Winston, a poor little old Winston jumping the Ashe, if you just hit 2 scope shots on that Winston, you're kind of ass blasting, especially if you hit headshots, and it's double headshot and you're getting 25 damage on possibly both as well. If you hit a scope shot on the build up to them coming towards you, you can kind of ass blast them. And this also doesn't get around the fact that he reloads 2 ammo. As I said, Ashe's big weakness is she does a lot of damage. Like, at her range as well, there's not a lot of people that can go toe-to-toe for it. She's very good at poking people out at mid to long range. She does a lot of splash damage with the burn. And she's got a bit of survivability with the coach gun. Her big weakness eventually is, you know, she reloads, and she reloads for, like, you know, an age. I think an Aeon even is how you measure her reload time in. If she reloads 2 ammo for every, you know, 2 consecutive shots she hits, she's basically not diminishing her ammo, which means she can just constantly be firing, which removes this weakness from her kit. And I didn't really mention it on the perks things. I kind of don't like the perks, or the idea of the perks that just remove a vulnerability entirely from a hero. I think that's not great design either. So for some of these reasons, I don't love the Viper Sting ability, but I kind of see where they were getting at with it. So I've given it 2 stars on the design. I think it's got an unfortunate consequence that it's going to be very strong against tanks, which I don't think was its real intention. And it's going to improve Ashe considerably. Ashe is a hero that somewhat sees a bit of play right now, somewhat behind Sojourn right now, I think, on the old pecking order, and a bit more map specific. I can see it pushing it to see a bit more use than she would otherwise see. And then finally there's Airburst. Dynamite has a 40% increased detonation radius while airborne, and refunds 3 ammo when thrown. Again, it's pretty much just a buff to the base skill. I think it's a little bit boring. It doesn't really change your playstyle. You're always going to be blasting the dynamite in the air anyway. You were very rarely letting it go into the ground and detonate then. The 40% increased detonation radius means it's harder to play around. You can't, like, spread out as much as... Oh, sorry. You have to spread out more than you normally do, but, like, spreading out probably at this point is unreasonable. Like, the chokes have, like, finite areas that you can go through, so it's a huge range, this 40% increase on a sphere. So, yeah, I think it's really obnoxious, and you get 3 ammo back when you throw it. Not even if you hit it, just if you throw it, you're getting 3 ammo back, so it's, again, a bit of a free reload, which means Ashe is going to be doing way more consistent DPS, so I think it's a very strong kit for Ashe. I'm not sure I'm on board with the design aspect of it. I've given this 1 star on design, but 4 star on quality. I think both of these major perks are actually pretty strong. I think Airburst is stronger if you're going into a team that is trying to play some sort of rush comp and they're all grouped up together, and they're crossing certain gaps all as a clumped up group. You can get some pretty big damage with the dynamite, and you could potentially build up a bob pretty quickly with it. Conversely, if you're going up against some sort of dive team, I think you'd prefer to get the Viper Sting just to try and ensure you put out that damage before they eventually get you. And I think it could make it really hard for you to set up some sort of... I think it's just hard to set up a dive versus, especially if Ashe hits a body shot or something and just holds on to that Viper Sting shot for a bit longer until the dive comes in and uses it just to blast a little bit more damage into them. I think it's a pretty obnoxious kit, honestly. Overall, I've given the markers a D on this one. I kind of don't like it, really. Bastion. We have minor perks, Smart Bomb, the A36 Tactical Grenades. Sorry, I need to be reading this in the correct voice. The A36 Tactical Grenades self-knockback is increased by 25% and no longer damages you. I don't know why, the A36 seems very more scientific than it actually really is. The grenade, basically, that people use already to propel you forwards via the explosion. It pushes you further, and you don't take damage. Does this change the way that you play Bastion? Yeah, it does. I quite like it, so I've given it 3 stars in design, and 3 stars in quality. It lets you potentially take angles that you otherwise couldn't take, and actually lets you, swing around that angle faster than you could have done before, because you're getting the increased knockback, so you're getting pushed faster, further. So, I quite like it. As a minor, again, that seems like a very solid thing to do. Obviously, to certain comps, you probably don't want to do that, because then you get isolated. So, again, I think there's a lot to like about this. Armored Artillery. Configuration Artillery, which is the ult, grants 300 temporary overhealth. Again, this does do something to Bastion. It does look on a basis, again, it's like one of these things I don't really like, where it's just a pure buff to the ability without really changing it. But it does change things, because normally when you're a Bastion player and you want to use your ultimate, you go waltz around the corner, you go hide. Anyone there? No? Do-do-do-do-do! Then you fire off your ult and, hit no one and do no damage with it because it's garbage. And that takes you out of the fight, right? You're not doing anything at that time. You had to walk away, hide around the corner. You use your ultimate. All this time, some sort of progress is happening on the payload. It may even be pushing away from you, so you might have to then walk back to your team again. It feels really clunky. Again, in terms of reworks, I think Bastion's rework, the neutral part of the kit I'm fine with. The ult, I think, was horrible. I think it's a really horrible change. I think it's by far worse than what his old one was. But yeah, this one, it depends on how you want to look at it. What you could potentially do now is use your ult just in the middle of a team fight, and maybe the 300 health keeps you up so you can use your ultimate and then, go back into fighting again. I think people always underestimate how much health you need to do to actually be able to do that. I think if you tried to pop this ult in the middle of a team fight, you would just explode. I think 300 temporary health wouldn't be enough. But you could be a little bit more willy-nilly with it. Let's put it that way. Maybe you're often an angle fighting two other people with, one other guy, and you maybe are about to lose that fight, and you just pop your ult. Don't worry about hiding. The 300 health is enough to keep you up versus them. And again, this is kind of why I like this. Not only is it giving you a bit of survivability in your ult, you could use it just to toss away your ult effectively and just take the 300 temporary overhealth so you don't die from an ability. So you just pop your ult. I'm going to survive through, a big burst of damage. I just go bang, bang, bang on the ground. Don't worry really about where it's going. I just want to get out of this ult again quickly because I'm in a team fight. And then you go back to team fighting again. And honestly, if Bastion's ult just said gain 300 temporary overhealth, it might actually be better than his ultimate right now. So I think for all those reasons, I'm actually giving it 5 stars on the design and 2 stars on quality. I don't think it really pushes Bastion enough in the positive direction to make him see play, but I think for a design choice, it's actually more interesting than you would give it on paper. Then we have Lindholm Explosives. Configuration Assault. This is him going into his turret mode. The weapon solely fires explosive shells instead of a rotary cannon. We're going to have to somewhat see the numbers on this one, to be completely honest with you. And I kind of mentioned it on the star rating as I just reveal it now a bit early. In theory, it's a good design choice, because currently his machine gun, or whatever you want to call it, mode, the assault mode, I guess, it does a huge amount of DPS to a single target, right? That's kind of the gimmick of Bastion. It does an insane amount of DPS. If he's shooting the explosive shells, which again, we don't know the numbers on yet, and they're slowly firing, I assume this means you're trading out raw DPS to a single target for a bit more splash damage. So again, it'd be better against comps where they are clumped together type of thing, and you can get some more accidental value. Until you see the numbers, I don't know if it's really good, but conceptually, the idea of changing Bastion's wheelhouse slightly from big single target damage to pretty big single target damage but a bit of splash, I think is fine for a design choice. So I like the theory of it, but we'll have to see it in practice. And then his other ability is self-repair, which is press E to rapidly heal yourself. This was what was in Bastion's old kit, and I kind of like the perks that sometimes knock back to old abilities that got removed from the game, and it gives them the chance to re-add them back as, you can't start with this. It would be too strong if you had the entire kit back of the old hero, but you can get this odd thing back from the past as long as you stay on this hero long enough. It does also change the way you'd play Bastion, because you would have a bit more survivability, which means that you could flank a bit more as Bastion. Is that a positive thing for the game? But that's not really what the devs should decide. I think they should just give this hero, some love. I think Bastion has really seen very, very little play. So I kind of like the idea of giving Bastion a bit of life. It makes him a bit spooky on the flanks. Do I think it means he's completely oppressive? Maybe at low ranks, but at high ranks, probably not. It probably doesn't move the needle enough, to be completely honest with you. So yeah, I gave this 4 stars on design because, again, Bastion would like a bit more self-sustained. He feels a bit like Zen in some regards, that he's El Presidente. You have to keep him up. He's like the VIP. He's sort of what you build your comp around. If you can slowly move him away from that caricature, huge lump of damage to something that can do a little bit of self-sufficient stuff, I think that'd be good for the game. So yeah, I think quality 3. I still don't think this means Bastion's going to be like exceptional, but it's a step in the right direction. So I've given him B. I think overall, despite the fact I think his Lindholm Explosives right now, and I kind of excluded it from my rating here because I don't really know what it's going to all look like when I see the numbers, or until I see the numbers, sorry. So based on his other major and his other minors, I think they're all very, very solid. And actually, the concept of the Lindholm Explosives I like either, so I'm pretty happy to put him into the B category. Then we have Mr. Cassidy. Minor perk, Quick Draw. Fan the hammer shots are individually controlled and can crit for 50% more damage. This is the ultimate I need to see and feel this in action. Just from the text, I can't help but think this is godly OP. Like, unreal OP on Cassidy. So, also I think it might be like repetitive strain injury generating Cassidy, assuming that by individually controlled and can crit means that rather than what you normally do with Fan the Hammer right now is, you know, you click the button and it goes bam, 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 and fires out everything that was left in the magazine. Or the drum, I guess. And it does less damage, but it comes out very quickly, right? So it's like a big burst damage on Cassidy. If you can control it, I assume by that it means it rotates once you fire, rotates once you fire, rotates once you fire, which is kind of what the left click is, which is one of my things I've got to gripe against it. It feels like, assuming that's the way it works, it's turning your right click into a left click. It's just going to have a bit more recoil, right? Because that's the other weakness to Fan the Hammer. It just sprays like up, and it's kind of hard to control. But you can control, like very good players obviously can control that recoil very, very well. Now, the thing that worries me is the DPS of Fan the Hammer is really, really high, because although the damage of the individual shot is low, it fires them out so quickly, it actually gets to a pretty disgusting DPS. I also remember back in original Overwatch 1, in Season 1, actually, I think even before Season 1, Fan the Hammer used to deal the equivalent damage to a primary fire shot. And right-clicking used to absolutely destroy tanks. It was probably the first meta in the game's release, I think, was Cassidy, where you would flashbang over a Rhine shield and you would right-click with casting. But in this time as well, you could run double of the same DPS. So you'd potentially have these comps where you would double Cassidy, you'd flashbang, or one of them would flashbang with the Rhine shield, and both would right-click into the tank and they would just explode. Like, no tank would live. It was like 2,000 damage. It was disgusting. And that was, unsurprisingly, patched pretty goddamn quickly because it was disgusting. So I'm a little bit concerned that this is approaching that level. Actually, just to pull out the numbers in case you're just interested about this. His primary fire on his left click is 70 damage, and the rate of fire is 2 shots per second. Okay? Fan is 45 damage per shot, but you can fire 8.93 shots per second, so effectively 9 shots per second. If you work this out, and you do it, we'll do it on headshots because it gets to disgusting damage very quickly. It means that for headshots on left clicks, you're getting 140. For Fan is I've got it here. Oh, it's 112.5 because you get 50% more damage on the headshot crit as well. So it's less, right, on these individual shots. However, if you're theoretically, the left click can do 280 DPS because you are limited by that rate of fire. You can only do 2 shots per second, right? Even if you're headshotting every time. That's your limit. What concerns me is how quickly can you controllably release the quick draw Fan the Hammer shots. Because if you can get that up to the rate that you could do Fan the Hammer, which is about 9 shots per second, that calculates as about 1,000 DPS. Which is pretty high. I will concede, in case you're wondering, without the 50% more damage, and the current version of Fan the Hammer, you can theoretically do 803 DPS. So it's not like Fan the Hammer right now isn't high damage, and it isn't like it's not balanced right now, because it's hard to get that. But I just worry that incredibly, incredibly good players, with a slight more control, and maybe without the normal recoil, can't they get close to that more consistent? Like, the 803 that you have right now in Fan the Hammer is not reasonable to access, because it's hard to crit all those shots because of the recoil, and it's like just impossible. But maybe you don't fire all 9 out. Maybe you fire like 7 shots per second instead with the more controlled form, and you just blast a tank in the face, and you just gotta fucking roll tank. So until I see it in action and like feel it for myself, I can't quite decide if this is disgustingly OP or not. Either way, I feel like it's a bit of a bad design choice because I feel like it just overwrites your primary fire. It's like, why would I use this over this? There is a bit more of a reason to this because your primary fire will have more range, which I didn't really mention, that this is obviously going to be shorter range. But I feel like it's just going to be super, super, super obnoxious. For those reasons, I've given it 1 star, and I think that I've given it a rating 5 star, but we have to see this in action. I've kind of like tentatively given it 5 stars because I think if it works the way I think it's going to work, Cassidy is going to absolutely destroy frontline tanks. You just can't play into them. If you're a Winston and you die with Cassidy, good luck, buddy. You're going to explode. So I really, really don't. I don't conceptually like the kit. I think it's going to be really awkward to use. And I think when you get really good at it, it's going to be disgustingly broken. So for all those reasons, like I have no joy for Quick Draw. Past noon, Deadeye... Oh, by the way, that's a minor quirk. Past noon, Deadeye refunds 30% ultimate charge if fully expires. This one I do like. This is like the one bit of the perk kit to, pull the veil back of how I feel about Cassidy's perks. It's the one bit of the kit I do like. So you get a choice effectively when you Deadeye. The choice is, do I Deadeye for kills or do I Deadeye for zoning? Ha ha ha, zoning ult, lol. Often for Cassidy, you don't pick up kills with Deadeye. It's just too hard. People just run away and scurry off into the, little cubby holes and you can't kill them. And then your ultimate just wears out and you get nothing for it, effectively, other than you've zoned some sort of space and maybe you stop your opponent pushing the objective for that time. That's kind of the value you get from it. It also potentially lets you get into a situation where maybe you had a poor cooldown trade situation and you just Deadeye to let your team get the cooldowns back and just reset the fight for the cost of your ultimate. Classically, though, it's a pretty weak ultimate, right? Deadeye is not normally a fight-winning ult. Let's put it that way. Now, though, you can use it in this way that I just mentioned, where you just let it work out for zoning, and it refunds you 30% of the ult back, so you're going to get it back faster, and maybe you can zone it again. It changes your playstyle. Maybe you don't look for kills anymore. You just keep your opponent off the objective and just play the objective instead of playing a deathmatch game. So, in some regards, I quite like it. The only thing I don't like about it, which is kind of why I've taken a bit of design marks off it, is it sort of rewards failure. How I look at it, like, if you have a bad ultimate, let's say you started the ultimate as like, I'm going to kill someone, and they just it's a trace and they have recoil and just fuck off again, and you're like, oh, well, I'll just let this, go out now, I'll let it expire, and I'll get 30% of my ult charge back, and we'll just say, no one saw this. That being said, there is a downside to doing this. Obviously, you're not actually taking part in the fight this way because you're not shooting people. So if you're really out of position, it is not good to do that. Either way, I've given it 3-star design, 3-star quality. I don't think it really pushes Cassidy forwards, but at the same time, it's a minor quirk, so I'm okay with it. Alright, now we get to the major quirks. Gunslinging. Critical hits with primary fire reduces the cooldown of combat roll by 3 seconds. This is the ultimate clip farming ability, I think, of all time. Because assuming that you keep hitting critical hit shots with Cassidy, he's just going to be rolling around endlessly firing, because remember, when he combat rolls, he reloads. And this is sort of one of the issues with Cassidy, is that you have potentially this big burst damage, right, in either Fan the Hammer at very close range, or your primary fire at this mid-range, You then can combat roll, which is also sort of like your one mobility cooldown, but it reloads your gun, and then you can do the same thing again. But after that, reloading is pretty painful. You become this slightly ploddy character. If you can just continuously be rolling, firstly, it gives you a bit of like mobility, which is kind of weird, but also you're just endlessly firing. It's a really big DPS up. And does this really change the way you're playing Cassidy? No, I think Cassidy, you're always going with the critical hits. You might say it's not as egregious because it is rewarding like very high skilled players because you are required to hit the critical hit shots to get the combat roll reduction, but 3 seconds? That's insane. Like, that's such a huge reduction. I'm trying to see if I've got the number on his actual combat roll cooldown. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. I don't play a lot of cast. In fact, I'm really bad at cast, to be honest with you, but he also has damage reduction in combat roll, right? Still, so it kind of potentially is going to make him into this unbelievable juggernaut of a character. So if you were really good at this guy and you just got into like 5 people just walking in straight lines at you, Cassidy could probably just solo the entire team now with gunslinging. So I think it's a pretty spooky ability. I think it feels like it's going to be really overtuned. I think combat roll is like, I think it's like 6 seconds, maybe it's 7 seconds. So it's a pretty big deal about getting a 3-second reduction. You're probably admittedly to get to like this disgusting clip farming situation after hit 2 critical hits, but versus tanks, that's going to be really easy because most of them have pretty big hitboxes. So obviously kind of countered by shielding, so there is a little bit of like thought processing, do I take this or not, don't I take this? But for the most part, where Cassidy would be good, I think you take this ability. So I've actually given it 1-star design. I think it's pretty garbage for the design standpoint, but I think again for the quality, it's going to be really strong. If Cassidy was going to be good in that situation, he's going to be super good in that situation now because it's just a straight buff to his kit. And finally we have Bang Bang. Cassidy throws a second flashbang that travels farther, but both flashbangs deal 30% reduced damage. I don't like it, again, to be honest with you. Does it really change the way you're going to use flashbang? You normally use flashbang to like catch a really mobile hero that's like, you know, fucking buzzing around you. Maybe it gives you a little bit of catch if someone's trying to escape from you, that you throw the further flashbang, which, by the way, we don't have any numbers on. And it stops them a bit further away so they can headshot them from there, but I don't really like it. I can't but think this is going to be pretty weak. Maybe if both flashbangs hit the target, you know, it's a big burst of damage to that character, and you're more likely to headshot kill, so. But for this reason, I feel like it's more than anything, again, not changing the playstyle, it's just buffing the numbers, which I think is a pretty boring way to do your perk system, so. I've given this one 2 stars just because I've given it the benefit of the doubt that it has a bit of catch on it. And I don't think it's going to be as good as Gunslinging. I feel like Gunslinging, the ceiling of it is just disgustingly high. Overall, I've given this character an E as well. I think this kit is really horrible. Not even only just the major perk, which is a 1-star, or one of the ones that I gave a 1-star to on design, but I think the quick draw one in the minor perk is super potentially like busted. So, admittedly, I might be wrong. It might be fine, but I can't help but think from what I'm reading, I'm a little bit concerned with how it's going to work, especially with like the primary fire as well. It's like, I'm not sure about it. Anyway, like last time when we had the E-rated hero, I'm going to do, you know, some minor suggestions and major suggestions, right? Actually, no, you guys are. I'm going to make you do the homework, mainly because I sat there thinking about it before I went to sleep last night, and I couldn't think of anything I would do with Cassidy. Some of the other heroes, and I think I've only got one other hero that I've put as an E rating. Most of the heroes, I actually took a bit of inspiration from like shorts or anything like that to be like, okay, this hero kind of does this in this short, so it'd be kind of cool to nod back to this thing, and that kind of gave me a bit of inspiration to what this perk could be, and then maybe use this perk as something that helps facilitate some weaker aspect of the kit, or just pushes that kit in a different direction, which is kind of like what I want the perks to do. Cassidy just doesn't have that. Cassidy may be the most vanilla, boring hero that I've seen in anything. He basically just pew shoot gun. That's kind of his kit. Even in his, I say it's his thingy video, his cinematic, which is really just Ash's cinematic, right? The reunion one. I don't even think he throws flashbang in that, right? He throws a grenade and shoots it, but it's not flashbang. He does have a lot of grenades on him, so I thought maybe something along the lines of that he gets more use of the flashbang could be something. But again, it's really boring. It's kind of actually hard to add something, I feel like, to Cassie's kit without like just drastically changing the identity of the hero. So it might just be because this character is so like vanilla in his appearance and like what he does. It actually might be just super hard to make a perk, which in some of the ways you might say this hero is like super svelte, like everything on the design on it is perfectly designed in this hero. So it's kind of hard to improve on perfection. Maybe that's the way that I'll look at it on for the dev side of things, but I really don't like the perks he's got right now. But let me know in the comments below what you would do for perks for Cassidy. Then we get to Echo. Echo has got friendly imaging as a minor perk. She can duplicate, which is an ultimate, friendly allies instead. Really good. I like it. You were always like at a bit of the whim of the opponent for what you could duplicate. If your opponent was playing a team comp which just had like no good duplicate targets, you felt like your ult was a bit weak. Now though, you can maybe get on with a duel with a friend. It's like, listen, can you play Hazard? I really want to duplicate Hazard. I think it's got a lot of merit. Or you go on with a Tracer play. It's like, I'm going to duplicate you on Tracer, and we'll just double Tracer Blink someone, and we're going to play this dive comp together, and we're going to have like a grand old time. It lets you have a bit more macro control over what you want to do with your duplicate. So I think it's a really good minor change, because again, it's minor, right? It's a pretty minor change, because a lot of the times you're going to be playing mirrors, right? If Echo is strong, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to be playing some sort of metacomp, and metacomps normally are similar, they mirror. In which case, you don't really need the friendly imaging anymore. You can just copy an opponent instead. So, situationally, good. Situationally, also pretty bad, right? Basically useless. So, I've given it 2 stars quality, 4 stars design. Enhanced duplication is the other minor, so both of the minors actually work with the ultimate, which, remember as well, any quirk that works with the ultimate, you're also at the... You're kind of not getting a lot of value from the perk, because you have to require the ultimate to be up, and ultimates build pretty slowly. Like, they're one of your most limited resources in the game, if not the most limiting resource in the game. So, yeah, it's somewhat brutal to have perks on your ultimates, but at the same time, it kind of lets you push them forwards, I think, a bit more, because you get so few of them that you make the minor perks better. Anyway, enhanced duplication. During your duplicate, your clone's first ultimate extends duplicate's duration by 3 seconds. Again, I really like it, because it looks like it's just a flat-out buff, right, to the duplicate, which it kind of is, but it lets you duplicate heroes that you otherwise wouldn't duplicate, because it takes too long to build up the ults. And or when you use the ultimate, it has some sort of like lingering type effect. For example, Bob. It's pretty slow to build Ash's Bob in the duplicate, mainly because it's kind of awkward to hit headshots on Ash in duplicate in a very short period of time. So it kind of requires you to hit a dynamite, to be honest with you, a big juicy dynamite for you to get Bob. And then you do all this, you get the Bob, you fire the Bob off, and it disappears after 2 seconds. Now you get to extend the ultimate for 3 more seconds to get like 3 more values of Bob, or 3 more values of Cum, or something from Torb's ult. So I kind of like it. It makes other duplicates a bit better. So I've given it 3 stars in design and 3 stars in quality. Also note, it's only the first ultimate. In the case of someone like Tracer, where it's actually like very, very valuable to potentially get 2 or more ultimates during a duplication, you're not going to get 6 seconds. It doesn't go indefinitely, because in the case of Tracer, I imagine there were situations where you could literally have gone infinite, effectively, until the fight ended, which is kind of all that matters with your ultimate, right? I got all my value from my ultimate for the entirety of the fight. That's pretty good. But that doesn't work. In majors, we have full salvo. Sticky bombs fire 50% more projectiles, but all sticky bombs deal 50% less damage. I kind of don't like it in the sense that it's kind of just a flat buff, really. There is some like niche situations where it's not quite that true, so I think if I remember rightly, I looked a bit more kindly on the design aspect. In case you don't know, normally the sticky bombs fire 6 stickies, and the bombs themselves do 5 damage on the stick and 25 damage on the explosion. And it's a tight explosion radius. In total, you can do 180 damage. Now, with the full salvo, you'll have 9 that do 25.5 each, assuming that the 50% less damage is on the stick and the explosion. I don't know if it's on one or the other. It's not quite worded properly. Either way, it's going to be around 25 and a bit damage. And that means in total, you're going to be doing about 230 damage on the full salvo. So you are getting a pretty big bang for your buck on the old damage. But it's pretty hard to stick all stickies on a single target, so it probably makes it a little bit better to confirm kills as well. If you're going against a really mobile hero, you can just spray across, and maybe you only need this 25 damage to kill them off. And yeah, as I said, you just cover this area in sticky goo, and they will more than likely get exploded. You could also use it as some sort of shield break tool, because you could just blast it into a Rhine shield and you get more damage than you would otherwise get. But I think generally speaking, it's a pretty boring ability. It's sort of just like a straight up buff on the ability without changing how she would work. So I've given it 2 stars design basically because it can do a bit of extra catch. And for quality, I actually think it's pretty solid. It's just more damage. Why would you want more damage on Echo? And Echo's pretty strong right now, so yeah, seems reasonable. High beams. Focusing beam eliminations reset flight's cooldown. Okay, I can really get way more about this one. It's a fun idea, right? You get promoted for this assassinating, dive-bombing Echo playstyle. And if you fuck up an assassination, you're dead. Like, you're in real trouble. So you go over like a rooftop, you drop your bombs onto someone, shoot a few shots, you blast them with the beam, you pick up the kill, resets flight cooldown, fly off again above a building, come back out again on another target that is maybe a bit further away, go and assassinate them. You just slowly pick anyone off that wants to play on their own. It's really frightening. However, as I said, if Someone is there to protect the person. You know, you launch a bunch of stickies, Azaria bubbles it or something, you beam it, they don't die. You don't have a cooldown to get back out again. So it's really like feast or famine, this. But if you feast, boy, could you be feasting. You could be really getting some, like, ace plays with this. So I love the idea of it. It's a really fun gimmick. Turns into this high mobility assassin. Very frightening. 4,000 design, 4,000 quality. I can see both of these major perks seeing some use in some way. I think the high beams one is probably a bit more scary, especially like some sort of dive comp, just to keep chasing people down, which is the other use of this. You kill someone, like someone else is trying to run away. Nope, not running away anymore. I'm flying towards you at max speed, so it's pretty spooky. I think the full salvo one is better again if you're going up against some sort of bunkery comp, just to, you know, dig them out. Overall, I quite like Echo's kit. Again, a pretty benchmarky kit. C is what I've rated it. Fairly solid. I wish the salvo was a bit more interesting. If it was, this would be a B to A tier hero. When we get to Genji, acrobatics, swift strike resets double jump. I'm fine with this, honestly. If you play aggressive with your swift strike, you get another mobility reset, which is your double jump. And you can get the vertical mobility, maybe to jump over something and escape line of sight that way. So I think it's a cool tool. Genji is kind of annoying to kill for a lot of backliners right now. It's only going to get worse, but I think this kit is pretty solid. Again, situationally pretty good. In other situations, maybe not good. It's probably rarely ever going to be not good, but there are certain situations, for example, if you just dash into someone that has like a flashbang, it's still not going to be great that you get the double jump because you're going to get hit with a stun. So you have to be really careful with how you use it, but if they haven't got anything to like have a catch on you, then you could just go on this more aggressive playstyle. And I always see Genji as like, there's two like classic ways to play Genji. One of them is to try and play strongly with his neutral, where you're trying to assassinate weak targets and then get back out again. And I think that's the fun way to play Genji, right? The other way, which I think is a bit more boring, but it's probably the strong way to play Genji, is that you just sit somewhere near the back of the map and you're just throwing shurikens at tanks and shurikens and shurikens and shurikens. And eventually you build up to your ultimate, and then you just use your ultimate to wipe them. So there's this playstyle of, I'm going to build up an ultimate and kill them, versus this, I'm going to be in your backline and I'm going to be trying to pick you off if you ever dare get lower at health. And then there's obviously, like, the things in between, right? The world isn't black and white as much as, you know, Americans would like you to think it's just black and white. A lot of things are like a curve, right? And some things sit in between those curves. So there's definitely a curve in playstyle where maybe, you know, you try and build blades up, but if you ever see someone get low, you try and dash in and dash out again quickly and don't sit too much on the back line, but I'm still going to assassinate you. Anyway, this acrobatics, I think, leans more into this assassinating backline type of thing. So I quite like it. So 4 stars design, 4 stars quality. I think it's a pretty solid thing. I think anytime you give Genji mobility, they're pretty happy with it. Dragon's Thirst. Dragon Blade swings gain 30% lifesteal. Okay. I don't like it, but again, I can see what they were going for with this. I think the idea of this, and we've seen it with a few of the perks, and we're going to see it with actually a perk coming up fairly soon. They tried to potentially make some heroes a bit more self-reliant than rather on their classical combo doubles. For example, we're going to see in a moment that Pharah gets one that makes her a little bit less reliant on Mercy. And I think this was the attempt of making Genji a bit less reliant on Ana. Because Blade is a scary ult, right? But it's way, way scarier as a Nano Blade. Because Genji gets a bit of damage resistance, it gets a little bit more damage, and it just means that he can stay in the backline longer without getting killed, and picking up kills and getting out again. So it's a really scary combo. I think the intention of this is to make it so that Genji can just keep swinging in the backline without dying, without the need for the nano. My kind of worry is, though, what if you just nano him still? What if you nano him still? It'll just make him just completely unkillable, right? In Nano Blade, you could possibly kill him in Nano Blade with like a few headshots, but it's going to be really hard now. To be fair, it was pretty hard before, so maybe it doesn't matter, but I can't but think, like, it's like, you don't need to use Ana anymore. Look, you get lifesteal in your blade swings. And then people are like, that's going to make Nano Blade even better. So, it might have an unintended consequence. I'll also say about this, like, it's situationally very good if a backline is clumped together, because if you can swing through 2 people at the same time, which is already good, obviously, for damage reasons, you get 60% lifesteal, which is disgusting. You'll just basically full heal, probably. So yeah, I've given this 2 stars design. I've given the benefit of the doubt a little bit, but I think it's going to get abused. With Nanoblade this is, and the quality of it, I think is 4 stars. There's a potential here as well that it might actually work better with things that weren't that good before, but were like okay. For example, like just Mercy beaming him was pretty good before, but maybe now with the lifesteal, he gets a bit of the protection that he was lacking in Mercy Beam that he would have got from a Nano. So maybe this low-key like buffs Mercy or something, or like Mercy's interaction with Genji. If you're okay with that, then, you know, happy days. His major quirks are Blade Twisting. Swift Strike deals 25 additional damage over time when used shortly after an elimination. Again, this is promoting this I'm going to assassinate your backline before even my ult comes up type of playstyle. I think that's cool. I'd like the idea of Genji to be a bit better than neutral. Not that he's bad in the neutral, by the way. And actually, he's seen playing right now in Overwatch Champion Series, so he's far from being a bad hero, but I always get the feeling with Genji that you're always just like picking him because you know eventually you're going to get a Blade. And Blade is such a strong ultimate. It's so good for like baiting out support ultimates as well and just, you know, fucking off again and surviving. But yeah, this gives him a bit more damage in the neutral department. In terms of like the quality of the ability, it's okay. He goes in, gets a kill, maybe dashes through on the way out. He does an additional 25 damage to them. Cool. It's pretty minor. Maybe it gets you to build up blades faster, so maybe it is working more towards his blade style, but at the very least, if he's trying to build up to his blade faster, he has to like put his body on the line a little bit. So I'm actually quite happy with this. I think it's a fine ability. I'm actually somewhat surprised it's a major. It feels quite minor to me, but we'll see. Maybe, again, I'm not a big Genji player, so maybe I'm like underestimating something. I guess also it's worth mentioning it's just an elimination. I'm not even sure if it's your elimination, but it could also be shuriken. So when I say you can dash in on someone to kill them and then dash out again and do the damage, you could also shuriken someone and then dash through like a group of people. And maybe that's the thing I'm seeing it on the shortcoming, that he could just do this big AoE damage, and it's like 100 additional damage over time then. Yeah, maybe that adds up. Anyway, 4 stars in design, because at the very least it's making me think about stuff, and for the quality I've given it 3. I actually think it's a bit weak. I don't think it really moves the needle enough. But it's okay. You'd be happy to put that onto Genji's kit. It's not going to make him worse, right? Then his other major is Meditation. Regenerate 25 health per second while Deflect is active. I kind of hate this ability again because it just doesn't really change the way you would use Deflect. It's not like you're going to deflect out of combat just to heal for 50. That seems stupid. You just walk to a health pack or walk to your support and get healing instead. And all it really does is give Genji 50 more health, because at some point in the battle he's going to deflect. By the way, deflect lasts for 2 seconds, so it's 50 health he's going to get effectively. And it's just going to mean that he can be more aggressive, which, again, if you like Genji, that's fine, but I think it's a bit of a boring way to like promote his aggression. He's really not putting his body on the line for any reason. So yeah, for those reasons, I've only given it 2 stars in design, and I've given it 5 stars in quality. I think this is the one you'll take. It seems boring, but again, if you just said I'm giving Genji 50 more health, and that was in the patch notes, people would lose their shit. So yeah, and again, if you're using like a blade combo, and you get hit for a headshot, and it's on a nano blade, you just deflect, get 50 health, and it's more health because the nano is causing you to take a damage reduction. So it's really strong, like, on paper. It's a very small ability, but I think it'll work out in the wash pretty strong. Anyway, I've given Genji a C, and this is somewhat of the story of a lot of the DPS and supports. Spoilers. I think a lot of them are pretty middling, which I think is good, by the way. Don't get me wrong, I'm not your parents. I don't see you get a C mark, and, like, listen, you're not getting any TV, no Xbox, no Nintendo Switch, no Peglin. No more. You're just grinding out. C's fine. C's good. C's passing in life. If you can pass through life, honestly, good on you. It's a miserable experience as much as it is anyway, so if you're getting just a passing grade, it's, you know, C's beyond the passing grade. It's like an average grade, I guess. All to it. I'm all for it. Good. Anyway, we move on to Hanzo. Hanzo's got a minor perk, Sonic Disruption. Sonic Arrow hacks nearby health packs for 12 seconds. I love this perk. This might be my favourite perk, actually. It's kind of bad, I think. But situationally, it does some really insane outplay potential. Stuff like, for example, like a Tracer blinks towards a health pack, and you fire a Sonic Arrow at the pack. Just before the Tracer gets to it, you hack it so she can't take it, and then you headshot her afterwards because she's wasted a blink trying to get to that pack. Can you imagine how big you would feel after that? Like, you would be able to take on anything in the world, right, after making that type of play. It's such a cool potential outplay. And then you don't even have to just use it as like some sort of catch tool. You could use it defensively. Someone is jumping you, or someone's jumping in an ally, they're going for a health pack, they're about to, die through all of this. You fire a Sonic at the health pack, you hack it, deny the opponents from getting it. Your support gets it, they get big health, they stand on the pack, keep getting more and more health. That's really cool. And there's some packs which are super, super important on certain points of the map. So I think this is a really big boon for Hanzo. Again, it's very situational, but I think that's what perks should be. I've given it 5 stars in design. In terms of quality, I've only given it 2 stars because, again, I think it's very, very situational, but I think it's a really cool minor perk. Don't get the quality, don't let it, muddle you up here. Don't let it get you twisted. This is, I think, the good way to the perks. And bear in mind as well, this is a minor perk, so I think the quality of the minor perk should always be a bit lower than 5 stars, so let's put it that way. So I really like it. I think it's such a cool idea. Unlike scatter arrows, storm arrows split into 3 new projectiles on their first ricochet and bounce 2 extra times. We've been here before. We keep coming here. I don't like scatter arrows. I think it's just cheap value. You fire it into the ground, it blasts off, does a huge burst of chunk damage. I don't think it was ever the intention of the way scatter arrows was meant to work. I think scatter arrows was meant to be, you headshot someone as Hanzo. They live on 1 health or something for whatever reason. They duck in behind a corner, or they go into a corridor or something, break LOS of you. And I think their intention was you fire scatter arrow into the corridor, and then they would kill them. It was basically a kill securing tool, rather than what it was used as in the past, which was you fire it at the feet of a tank and they just explode, because they take all of the split arrow damages to their face. Storm arrows is already really obnoxious as it is. It's a pretty big burst damage on a sniper hero, but Hanzo is a sniper hero. And I don't think he should have this, huge amount of continuous burst damage to a tank. I don't think a tank buster hero should be a sniper, personally. Anyway, that's just the storm arrows now. Now you also get the scatter arrow effect, so I think it'll be beneficial to fire them into the ground. You get 3 additional projectiles, and if they all go into the tank, again, and it's the way that scatter arrow used to work, that's going to be disgusting. It's like triple the damage of a storm arrow. So this could be really scary if you're a tank, especially if you're a ground tank that can't eat damage. So, yeah, good luck with, Radatra, good luck Arista as well. I think you're going to have a miserable time with this. At least you got a bit of space spinning on Arista, but if you don't have that and they use scatter arrow, you might just explode, unironically. Anyway, I've given it 2 stars in design because it still has that ability to potentially finish off kills as it was intended to do, but I think more often than not it's going to be abused for disgusting damage. Quality, I think 4 stars. Hanzo's not in a great spot right now. He seems like extremely, extremely minor play, and he's only been seeing a bit of play recently. It's because of the Torbjorn comp that counters Hazard gets sort of outspanned by other heroes. For example, Hanzo's really good into Torbjorn because you can just kill the turret from a mile away, and you can play out of the effective range of Torbjorn pretty easily, and you've got better vertical mobility than Torbjorn. So Hanzo's seen a bit of play into that Torb comp, but beyond that, he doesn't see that much play. I think this could actually push him in a more viable direction. Again, probably not a competitive sense, because again, he's a bit susceptible to just getting dove on and just munched up, but I think if you're a ladder Hanzo player and you see the scatter arrow ability, I imagine you're pretty happy with life. Especially since he's on a minor. His major abilities are Dragon Fury. After hitting an enemy with primary fire, gain 25% attack speed for 1 second. I think this is just a primary fire buff, and therefore it's a bit boring. It's one of those things, again, where it's do you pick this with, a design thought of what your opponent's doing, or what your team is doing at this point in time? Not really. It's really is my other perk good for this situation? No, therefore I'll take Dragon's Fury because it's going to be good everywhere. I think that's a pretty poor design. I think it's a bit boring, so I've only given it 1 star. I think quality-wise, it's just going to be an improvement for Hanzo, right? If you hit a shot, you're getting more attack speed, which means that you're going to hit your next shot faster, so I think it's also... I just think it's a bit boring, honestly, so I'm fine with that rating. The other one is Yamagami Technique. Wall climb accelerates your lunge cooldown by 250%. And it's kind of interesting. So this is the choice you make if you're going up against Hyper Dive, right? And Hanzo's a bit susceptible to dive because your little lunge is not that big a horizontal movement. You've got really good vertical movement though. So what you could do now is you could lunge towards the nearest wall. You could wall climb up the wall and then jump again to somewhere else. And maybe that's enough movement for you to escape from someone. So maybe this does let you survive the dive. I think at least this makes you situationally think, oh, I'm against some comp that's going to be up my ass all game. Let me pick the ability that lets me get away from people that are up my ass. So I actually quite like the design choice of this one. I think it kind of like salvages the major perks on Hanzo. So I've given it 3 stars in design. I do think quality-wise that it may just be worse than Dragon Fury. Maybe you just accept that limitation for Hanzo that you are a bit susceptible to dive and you need a bit of babysitting. And actually keep the DPS up. But I think actually the decision-making is pretty close between those two. Maybe you do have situations where you take the Yamigami technique. So I think it's fine. Overall, I've given Hanzo a D, though. As much as the Sonic Disruption is super, super good, and by the way, this is probably more like a D+. As much as that one is really good, I give more onus onto the major techniques. The major perks, even. And the major perks, I think, a bit sucky for Hanzo, to be honest with you. But if you'd said, I think Hanzo should have been a C, I would have accepted that as well. Junkrat, Mr. J Silly himself. He has Aluminium Frame as a minor perk. Steel Trap's throw range is increased by 50%. Yeah, I guess it changes how you use the Steel Trap, right? You could throw it at a great distance and try and just snipe someone in the... Well, not in the air, but snipe someone at a great distance in it. Is that realistically viable? Probably not. I imagine it's unbelievably hard to do that, but if you do it, you get a pretty big stun off, so... Yeah, it does change the way that you could use the Steel Trap, so I can't but think that it deserves more than a 1-star on design. But in quality, it's 1 star. It's just going to be so fucking hard to do, surely. Like, I just can't imagine ever hitting that shot in the Steel Trap. But maybe these insane Junkrat players that have been playing the game for 8 years, only playing Junkrat, who's only viable on like 1 map, and that map has been removed from the game for about 4 years. Maybe those insane bastards will like go, oh yes, Steel Trap throw range, I'm gonna pick people out of the, a great distance and get them with my Steel Trap. So I actually might be under egging this one, but I actually knocked the design mark off this one because I just think it's so fucking hard to do that it's just unrealistic. It's kind of just, this is a stupid ability. It's other one though I don't think is stupid. I actually think this is a really good design. Nitro Boost. During Riptide, which is the ultimate, use the left shift to gain a quick boost of speed. Doing so reduces Riptide's damage by 50%. That's great. Honestly, round of applause. I really like that decision-making again. Because you don't have to use this perk, right? You could use the tire the way you always use the tire and get the big explosion radius of damage and maybe go for a multi-kill. Alternatively, if you're going up against a team that has a lot of like spam, and especially like more consistent spam damage like on a sniper, where they might just snipe your tire, you can make this thing really fucking hard to hit by giving it a super speed boost. However, you trade off for that by reducing the damage greatly, so you're not going to get this multi-kill anymore. If you blow it up in the middle of a group of people, you're just going to do splash damage across all of them. They're probably all going to live. This means then you have to go for a single target, and you maybe pick up 1 kill with your ultimate, and that's the trade you make, right? It makes you make a decision. I can kill 1 person with my ultimate. It's going to be really hard to kill, so it's hard for them to deny me value. Fantastic. Alternatively, if they would struggle to deny your your tire for whatever reason, you can go for the whole shebang still. You don't have to get the nitro boost. You get the decision making, and you can make that midway through using your ultimate as well. You don't need to instantly give you the nitro boost. You could go, oh crumbs, I took a bit of damage on the way. Let me use this nitro boost to try and make sure I get a value from it. So I think this is really cool. Really good. Really good. So 5 stars design. Quality-wise, I think 3 stars. It doesn't really, again, push Junkrat into the realm of viability. He's probably one of the least viable heroes right now in the game. But I think it's quite a nice change. He's also got Frag Cannon on Major. Frag launches projectile speed is increased by 40%, but his max ammo is reduced by 1. I think his ammo is 5 normal, so it takes it from 5 to 4. Again, really cool decision. You might just say it's a primary fire buff, but I don't super agree with it. It changes what his primary fire is good at doing. His primary fire is really good for aerial denial, especially into like chokes. If you can get a really tight choke and you're on a Junkrat and you can just keep blasting your mines into that area and your opponent has to go through it, it's really obnoxious. So classically for you old Overwatch heads, Anubis' first point was like the ultimate Junkrat map, because you had to go through a really, really obnoxious choke. And Junkrat could spam mine after mine after mine, and you would just pick up random kills, and it was really fucking annoying. And what was even worse was he could play out of line of sight and get an angle to spam into this choke. It was really toxic. And then also, more so than that, his flank was also just a choke. So once you got through that choke, the flank was a choke. So it's like, ha, you got through one choke, my Junkrat is here to deal with you in the other choke. He was really, really toxic. And was like the origins of Jake-Rat story. Unfortunately, that map has been removed from Overwatch for quite some time now, so there's not really another like super good Junkrat map like that, but there's a few that are pretty close to it. So, but anyway, this playstyle of just random value in a choke was a bit annoying to play against. Let's put it that way. Now you can play as a bit more of I'm controlling my own destiny Junkrat. You trade off your one extra ammo, and you're sort of trading off some damage because of it. And instead you get a much faster frag launcher. So you might be able to hit things like Farah in the sky. You might be more reliable at hitting tracers or Kurokos or anything like, very thin heroes like that. Whereas before it was kind of like down to the look of the draw almost that you hit them, because they had so much movement compared to your projectile speed that they could always like kind of react to what you were doing. So I think this is a really interesting change. If you're on a map again with more open lines, not as many tight chokes, maybe you take the frag cannon and you just try and, frag people. So yeah, I've given this 4 stars design, 3 stars quality. I think it's a pretty solid change for Junkrat. And actually this pushes him towards, I think, a state of maybe viable. You could still do your concussive mine shenanigans as well, where you just blast yourself into the skybox and you just start shooting people down with like a sniper rifle frag launcher. That's clip-worthy. His other perk is TikTok. Concussive mines arms 0.5 seconds after landing. It increases their damage by 50%, explosion radius by 50%, and health by 200%. I kind of don't like this one quite as much. This rewards like your lurking Junkrat type of play where he sits in a corridor with a trap and a mine on the wall, and if someone tries to walk through it like a flanker, you send their ass back to the Stone Ages, right? If they go into that trap, you just giga explode them. The reason I don't completely like it is because it's also like a stealth nerf to other aspects of his kit. Firstly, it makes it harder for you to, you throw and detonate a mine and kill someone because it doesn't arm until 0.5 seconds after landing, so you can't do it in the air anymore, which is pretty obnoxious. So you're really looking for people walking through areas, and then you're setting off the mines that they don't see the thing. So I can't but think that it's like, it takes away from that aspect of his kit. Also from his movement aspect, because the other thing about the concussive mines is he gets 2 of them, and he often uses them for mobility. Even like the coach gun on Ash to blast himself away and blast someone else away from him if he's been dove. He can't do that as easily anymore with concussive mine, because he can't throw one out and detonate it until 0.5 seconds after it lands. So he is way more diveable in this situation, which maybe he wants. Maybe he sets up some little sneaky trap where he's like, ha ha ha, come and follow me, you pretties. You walk around the corner and it's like, a mine there, and you just fucking set it off and blow up the tracer or something. Probably you dying in the process, but maybe that's what gets you off in life. Maybe that's, maybe that's what gets your rocks off. I don't know. But I think it's pretty bad for even just like air movement as well, where some Junkrat players, would set a mine on the ground, set it off, and then wait for the other mine to recover before they do this. Throw another mine and get another second leap. You can't do that anymore with TikTok. You only get the one explosion off the ground if you set up beforehand. Admittedly, it's a bigger explosion. It's a 50% bigger explosion. But you can't, move side to side as well through that. I think it's a bit of a big nerf to your movement, so. And I can't think of too many situations where it's going to be better on... I can't think of a map where you particularly want this lurking Junkrat style versus just having the base kit, which I think was fine for that. So I've given this design 3 because at least it is pushing you in a different direction. I just think the direction doesn't exist, which is why I've given it a quality 1 star. And overall, I've given Junkrat a C. I think it's an okay kit. Really just let down by TikTok, honestly. I think other than TikTok, the rest of it is pretty okay. Maybe Aluminium Frame as well lets him down. Alright, now we get to Mei. Mei has Chilling Reach. Her primary fire's range is increased by 30%. I don't like this. It's really, really boring. Does this change the way that Mei works? Not really, no, right? She's still just going to be blasting people in front of her. And all it's going to do is make it really obnoxious to play against Mei, because it's harder to get away. If you've got a hero with a bit of movement ability and you're like slowly like dragging your way away from this slow on the primary fire, you have to drag yourself further away now because of the increased range. So, and at the end of the day, you might be like saying like, oh, well, it increases Mei's range, right? It doesn't really. Like, the right click has got more range than the left click, even after this buff. So you'd probably still want to right click people at great distances. So it just increases the obnoxiousity, is that a word? The obnoxiousness of the left click. So I really don't like this. I think it's a pretty poor design of a kit. There's not really any situation where you would not pick this, and not any situation where you would particularly pick this. It's just if you want to have more damage at a bit of a greater range, you take this. And actually, again, I tried to do these ratings on the individual ones just in a vacuum, but when you see the next one as well, like, there's really no reason not to take this one. It's just like free value. It's free real estate. Anyway, I gave this one 1 design and 3 quality. I think it's okay, but I didn't really push Mei in any direction. It just makes it a bit more obnoxious. Her other minor is Permafrost. Ice Wall's duration and cooldown are increased by 2 seconds. This is a nerf. I'm sorry, but you can't convince me otherwise. This is a nerf to Mei. So I wouldn't ever take this perk. And by proxy, it's a bad design choice, because it's untakeable. In the annals of Overwatch 2 history, have you ever thought of a situation, or been in a situation where you're like, holy shit, I wish my ice wall lasted longer? I've never been in that situation. I've been in situations where people have broken my wall, and they've escaped through the wall, but this doesn't do anything about that. It just makes the wall last longer. Normally the timing of an ice wall is good enough to pick up a kill if you wall them off. It's a really obnoxious tool on certain maps, so I think it's fine. So why would you want this really fine tool at a 2-second longer cooldown when the upside is non-existent? And that's kind of where I come at it. I think this is horrible. Like, it doesn't do anything. It honestly, like, the upside is non-existent and the downside is existent. So for those reasons, I've given it 1-star design and 1-star quality. I actually nearly broke convention and gave this 0 stars in both. I think this is a horrible, horrible perk. I don't want to, like, you know, make someone cry or anything on the old perk team, but I'm really interested by testing, like, how this made the cut, because I just don't get it. I simply don't get it. Then we get to the major perks. Biting Cold. Secondary fire hits slow enemies by 15% for 1.5 seconds, stacking up to 30%. This is also extremely toxic. Just to, like, kind of break my convention a little bit, where I've been really saying about the design about the hero you're playing. But if you're playing against Mei, man, this is a lot of slow on the kit again. We've like gone from a history of Mei where she used to hard freeze people on the left click, and it's like, okay, we don't want the hard CC anymore. That's kind of toxic. To giving it just like unbelievable amounts of slow, which is kind of equally toxic if you're a mobile hero. Like, good fucking look if you're trying to play Wrecking Ball into this hero. Like, you're fucking not moving. You're never being Fireball in this game. You're always going to be like put out by Mei. But what's particularly obnoxious about this one, I think, is that Mei's right click is like deceptively strong. Her right click, I think, if I'm trying to just check my notes now, just to make sure I'm not talking complete bollocks. I'm pretty certain the right click does 85 damage, right? Yeah, it does. Right click is 85 damage. Bearing in mind that we were talking about Ashe earlier, and she does 75 on a body shot. So Mei does more damage on a right click than Ashe does on a scoped shot. I do appreciate it's hit scan versus projectile, so it's harder to hit the Mei one. But the Mei one is still pretty damn quick. If you're a good projectile aimer, it's not unreasonable to be out bullying an Ashe at range. The matchup is definitely favoured on Ashe, but the Mei can actually do something about it. And if you hit one of these fucking right clicks, they get slow, which means you're more likely to hit another right click. So you can actually start to like really pound someone at range with this Biting Cold. So I think this is extremely, extremely oppressive. It does change a slight playstyle for Mei, that maybe you don't want to left click that often and you just try and right click everyone, but I don't know. I don't think it really super changes what you want to do with Mei or the whole game state. It's really just, I think, if you're going to a more pokey comp, you take the Biting Cold. Anyway, I'm giving it a bit of benefit of the doubt and giving it a design of 2 stars because, as I said, if enemies are trying to play a bit further away, you're not going to get that much value from your primary fire, even probably with a 30% additional range. So you might take the Biting Cold. But I think this is really underestimated as an ability. I think this is a really strong ability. And then the final one is Cryostorm. Cryo Freeze slows and deals 70 damage per second to nearby enemies. I hate to say this again. I hate this ability. I think this is so toxic. And it's in a few ways like, okay, let me deal with the first part of this first. It's another slow on Mei. So that's pretty toxic already. Just more and more slows on Mei. I do appreciate you can't take the right click slow with the Cryostorm slow, but it's slow on top of slow. It's also really toxic because almost every other ability in the game that like a hero is doing damage to you, you can stop it by some means. You can stun them, you can shield them, you can kill them, you can sleep them, you can, I don't know, push them away. In Ice Block, Mei can't be touched. She's intangible, right? So how do you deal with this? You can't. So she just goes invulnerable in your team and starts doing 70 damage per second and a slow in an AoE. It's really toxic. And you know what's even worse about all of this? I think it's shit. I think it's a really shit ability, so it's toxic to play against, and I think it's actually pretty shit compared to, especially Biting Cold, but you have to bear in mind as well, the left click I think does 80 damage per second and slow, so assuming the enemy team isn't completely surrounding you, it's better just to left click them than to jump into the team and Cryostorm them, because assuming that they live through the 70 damage per second, your ass is dead because you're in the middle of the enemy team. So yeah, I really don't like it. I think it's a super weak design. The only thing I can say to give it the benefit of the doubt, and maybe this is where they were coming from, was that you get situations on Mei where you're in Cryo Freeze and you're like, oh, I'm going to survive. And then you just see like, you know, two of their team surround you and it's like, oh crumbs, I'm not going to escape this, am I? And they just brutally murder you as you come out of Ice Block. This kind of gives them the fuck off if they try and like surround you in Ice Block. They can't just be immediately on you, as they'll start taking damage. So there is some upside to it, but I think generally speaking, this is like the upside of it is so minor for a design perspective versus the intangible hero doing 70 damage per second to you and slowing you. I think it's really toxic. So I've actually given this 1-star design and 1-star quality. I think it's not a great ability. And if it were a good ability, I think it'd be really unfun to play against. So, I really don't like Mei's perks. I think they're extremely toxic. And as a result, I gave her an E. Now, unlike Cassidy, where I kind of just said, like, you guys do the work for me, please. I have actually had some thoughts on Mei's perks, what I would do with Mei instead. For minor perks, how about making the ice wall curved? It's not a big change, right, versus like some other things where you can like make it longer. But on maps without a good choke, let's say you're on, I was going to say Rialto, but that's a really bad example. Let's say you're on Junkertown, and you get to the bit where it's this big open space. I do appreciate they put a house there now to like close it in a little bit more, but it's generally speaking a big open bit of land. Ice Wall's kind of not that great there. You're probably more likely to use it for cover to like encroach upon the snipers. But if you put a curved wall on it, it just makes it a bit harder for someone to get out of. They have to like walk into you slightly to get around. I'm not saying, by the way, this has to be like an incredible U-shape. It could literally be like a pretty soft curve. And it still makes it a bit long for them just to walk around the wall. Makes them decide, you know, should we break the wall? Should I walk around it? And it maybe just catches them off guard a little bit. So I think this would be an appropriate minor. It does enough to make Mei better in a situation, aka on a map that's not got a particularly good choke, without being super good. And it does make you have a little decision making. If you're on a map with an appropriate choke, why would you take Ice Wall Curve? You wouldn't. There's no point. The other one, which is a bit like, I'm going to say it's a bit, I'm not actually not convinced by my own work here. I had a few thoughts, but most of them were more major orientated than minor orientated. Basically, this was, and I'll tell you the order of this. It wasn't the ability was conceived first. It was actually the thing I'm harking to was conceived first. So I was watching the Mei cinematic, and there's a point in the cinematic where, in Rise and Shine, that Snowball sacrifices their energy for the good of the cause, you know, and like powers up the base. So I thought it'd be really cool if Mei in some way, or Snowball in some way, could power up your team in some way. And I sort of thought of it as maybe like you could, in your Blizzard, any allies, their shields and barriers, so, you know, like their blue health or their deployable shield type things, could regenerate a certain amount of HP per second. And if you really wanted to turbocharge this, you could almost turn Mei's Blizzard into a pseudo support ult. Instead, maybe like you start to move some of the power away from locking people down, which maybe is bad against certain comps, right? if you're against a comp that has a lot of mobility, Blizzard feels kind of bad sometimes. Maybe have this opportunity in the perks to turn it into a support ult instead, which could be really interesting. Get 3 support ults and trade a DPS ult for it. I'm not against that idea as a perk to like completely transform something into something else almost. Maybe this is me trying to like live in a bit more of an open queue world or a bit more variety of team comps, but I wouldn't mind seeing that in the perk list, or at least something that could be enabled in the perk list. For major perks, I even thought of names for them here. Again, I'm nodding back to some stuff that happened in the lore of Overwatch. That could work. How about you replace your ultimate with a thrown-timed explosive that freezes everything within an X radius, obviously respecting line of sight, for a short time. So rather than getting this thing where it ticks over a long period of time and gets a big freeze at the end of it, aka big CC, it switched it instead to a very short time, like it's harder to get away from, but the stun on it, or the freeze on it, is extremely short. I think that'd be pretty good into like some high mobility comps. Again, it lets you have a decision making aspect. If you're going up against like Rush v Rush, you don't really want this, right? You'd rather have the longer one because you're more likely to catch someone. Also, if you have heroes with some sort of long CC as well, you can combo them together, like Grav plus Blizzard. You wouldn't want this one, so it has a bit of thought in there, right? It also knocks back to like the Overwatch 2 cinematic, which maybe they don't want to knock back to at this point because, you know, but there's a bit in that where, like, you know, Tracer puts a pulse bomb on the I don't know what to call it, the maid tank, the snowmaker, the smoothie maker, the snow cone maker. That's what I was trying to get to. Maybe she puts like the pulse bomb on the snow. I actually forgot the word already. I'm actually losing my mind. I had a birthday this week, by the way. I think it's actually caused me to lose memory. I'm losing RAM at this point. The snow cone maker, fuck's sake, whatever, you get the point. The other one I was thinking of is Rise and Shine. Allies can enter cryo block. Is that too stupid? I was like, let me go batshit crazy with this one. The other thing I thought of is like you could potentially move in cryo block, because again, you get into these situations in cryo block where you can get surrounded by the enemy team if you're just trying to use it for survivability and your team sort of like starts to lose the battle, or your opponent ults and like pushes your team back. You can get caught out. What if either your allies could enter the cryo block? Imagine the situation where, like, you know, an opposing team goes to like barrage you and just everyone dives into the cryo block. I think that'd be really fucking funny. And then maybe they heal in the cryo block. And again, it creates a situation where, like, sure, we're all like okay right now, but at some point you've got to leave the cryo block, and the enemy team can just surround you and pound your ass. So it's not as strong as I think you'd think it is, but you could potentially block ultimates with it, so it has a bit of counterplay. I also like the idea of, combined with this, admittedly, it's probably a bit too strong, but you could move in cryo block. I just like the idea of, firstly, they see me rolling, and secondly, they hate it. As a team, you all just jump into this cryo block and just May rolls into the middle of the team. No one can take damage because you're in a cryo block, and everyone just jumps out the end of it, like the clown car has opened its door and all the clowns have got out, and you just start doing a little fight. I think that'd be really fucking cool. I think it'd be funny as well. I don't know if it'd be OP, but it'd change how you'd play May at the very least, so they're my, like, suggestions for the perks for May. Then we get to Pharah. I teased Pharah a little bit earlier. Pharah's got 2 minor perks. Drift Thrusters. Pharah can move while Barrage is active. This has been, like, seen so many fucking times at this point. Like, every time there's, like, some sort of Junkenstein-like effects or anything that changes the ability of the heroes, I feel like Pharah can move in Barrage. I think it was in an April Fool's as well, right? It's not as strong as people think it is. It gives Pharah a bit of survivability in an ult, which is basically non-existent right now. It reduces a reliance on certain heroes like Anna, for example, to nano her so she survives through the barrage, Zarya to bubble her, or Diva to DM her. I don't dislike the idea of it. I think it changes how you would use barrage, and it's also circumstantially pretty good, whereas in other circumstances it might be not weak. I don't think it'd ever be weak, so it has got a little bit of design flaw to it. It's kind of just buffing an ability that doesn't really change how you would use it, but at the same time, it does change how you could use it. It's just always making it better, is I guess what I'm saying. There's not really a trade-off on it. I've given it 3 stars design and 3 stars quality because of that reason. Like, in terms of, like, the other ways to use it, you could potentially barrage and then, like, move around the corner and back around the corner again to block LOS. So, rather than just, like, all-inning the barrage and accepting, like, I'm probably going to die, I'm trading 2 or 3 people out with me, ideally 3 people. Instead, you can, like, maybe take 1 person and just hide behind the corner and don't trade your own life. So, there is a little bit of nuance about it. The other one is Helix Shields. This is the one I was referring to earlier. It converts 75 of your health to shields. This makes you a bit less reliant on mercy, right? Because shields are a resource that return back to the hero over time of not taking damage. And more importantly, they return faster than normal health does. And also importantly, they return back together as well. So when you get to the health cooldown, the health regeneration cooldown, which I think is 5 seconds on DPS as well, it will regenerate your health at the same time as the shields are regenerating. So it's like double regeneration. This means you don't really need to be followed around the map by Mercy. You potentially can just fly over a rooftop, take 5 seconds or whatever it takes to get out of the battle. Maybe take a pack with it as well. And you can get back into the battle again without the reliance of a Mercy, which I think is a pretty nice thing. So it does change your playstyle far as well. You can play it a little bit more removed from your team. So I do like the design of this. I think it's pretty solid. Again, I've given it 3 stars design, 3 stars quality. It's like very benchmark. This is fine. In the mages, we have Concussive Implosion. Concussive Blast knockback is inverted to a pull-in. Now, what is noticeable about this, or you need to notice about this, or note, I'm actually, the RAM is corrupted. I might need to defrag my brain at this point. What's important to note about this ability? I think everyone started losing their shit when they saw this, because they were like, holy shit, they've given Pharah a mini Grav, and Grav plus Barrage was like a pretty brutal combo. Only not really seen too often because neither of these heroes are particularly good, but if you could get them both together, it was really powerful. It's kind of like giving Pharah a mini Grav, so she could Concussive Blast, suck everyone together, and then Barrage the suck. And it sort of guarantees maybe 2 kills. Now, one thing you maybe don't realize of this is you are trading something for this, because Concussive Blast is also a pretty good movement tool for Pharah, and also a pretty good tool for getting people off Pharah if she is dove in some way. She can't do it with an implosion, but it does still work though. So if you implode someone that's right in front of you, it will suck Pharah into the person that is being sucked. And that could get you into some really tricky situations. So yeah, you have to be really careful with how you use this. It definitely is trading a bit of survivability off for this potential setup play. And I do appreciate this Concussive Blast. Not only can it set up your own Gravs, it could set up other abilities. Like you could suck people into like an Orisa pull. Like the Orisa pulls, everyone comes together. They're trying to run out of it, and you suck them back in again, and they get gigaflots by the Orisa. So it is really like, I mean, everything that was on the old Orisa pull and was a scene that's a strong combo, like pull rock, pull hook, probably will work with Pharah as well with the Concussive Blast. So yeah, it's a really strong ability, but you have to be super careful. And what will be really interesting is seeing people moving between Concussive Blast and Concussive Implosion, because I assume if you implode on a wall, you could suck yourself closer to the cover faster. So it's going to really change the way that you play your defensive playstyle between having the perk on or off. So I really like this. I think it's a really cool idea. So I want to see what the really good Pharah players do with this. Anyway, I've given this 4 stars to both design and quality. I think it has some potential, some really big setup plays, but I think the risk on it is actually fair that you're able to do this. Again, to compare back to Orisa's pull, Orisa didn't really have this risk associated with her, right? Because she had Fortified, so she was an unkillable battle cattle. Pharah doesn't have that. Pharah is a bit more killable. Admittedly, she can just fly into the skybox and makes some heroes impossible to hit her, but for the most part, unless she's playing pretty smart, she's going to be a bit out of the way of cover. Most good Pharahs, though, will play with some cover in mind, but there is definitely a bit more risk-reward for Pharah trying to set up one of these plays. I mean, she should all get a head blasted off as soon as she steps out to do this, but yeah, I think it's a really cool idea. Our other one is fuel stores. So Jet Dash grants 50% fuel. Maximum overfuel is increased by 100%. I think this is a bit of a boring option, to be honest with you, but maybe it's good. It does definitely change the playstyle again. It rewards Pharah for playing like this flanking mobile assassin type character. You use your Jet Dash maybe to, close the gap onto someone, and then you can just fly up into the skybox when to try and get away from people to not take damage. So in certain situations, this will be pretty strong. I think it's a bit of a boring ability, I'll say, but conceptually, I think it's completely fine on a design standpoint. I've given it 2 stars on design and 3 stars on quality. I may have been a bit harsh on design. It's probably like one of those things which is about a 2.5. I kind of don't like the fact that maybe it buffs people not using their fuel appropriately because you're getting more fuel for your buck, but again, it's like one of those things. If you gave like the best players more fuel, the bad players would still misuse it, and the better players would just use it better. So perhaps it's completely fine. I've given a C overall. Again, it's another pretty good benchmark hero. I actually quite like all of her abilities, so it's more of like a C+ type hero. Then we get to Reaper. Reaper has the Death's Shadow. Shadow Step reloads Hellfire shotguns and has 25% increased range. I think this ability is more spooky for the 25% increased range. It lets Reaper cover bigger gaps. And this was always like one of Reaper's issues, right? He doesn't really excel on long sight line maps, so... but he could excel if you can just TP onto the fucking Widowmaker and just ass blast her, so... maybe she can do that... Oh, sorry, you can do that now on the Death Shadow. Generally, from a design point, I actually quite like this, because normally you initiate, I think, on your... Or at least to some degree, you initiate on your Shadow Step, right? You use that to steal some sort of, like, movement tech. And by that I mean, like, you're stealing, like, a position with it for free. You don't have to walk there, you can just teleport there, and maybe people don't see you. So you're sort of, like, stealing this positioning from your opponent. If you do that, though, you're not getting the reload. So maybe you change your way of playing Reaper. Maybe you play it a bit more frontliner, you poke the tank a little bit, then you Shadow Step out onto someone else, you get the reload back, you get this increased range as well, so you can go actually into the back line, and then you start blasting someone else again. Instead of, like, using it to initiate onto someone, it gives you a bit of frontline presence, and it's like, okay, I'm done with the frontline, I'm going to the back line now. I'm here, there, everywhere. You have to deal with me here, there, everywhere. So perhaps it's a bit of an annoying playstyle for Reaper, but it certainly changes the way that you might want to use your cooldowns. Anyway, I give it 4 stars on the design and 3 stars on the quality. I don't know if you'd still want to do Shadow Step in the middle of a fight, but maybe. The other one is Soul Reaving. Again, we're going back to the good old days. Enemies that die, they drop soul globes, and if you pick them up, Reaper gets 50 health. This was the classic old version of Reaper, where when people died, they dropped these floating orbs, and if you gave them the suck, you'd get 50 health. And you basically gain this juggernaut, right? That was the idea. I kill one guy, 50 health back. This gives me enough health to fight another guy. I kill another guy, I get 50 health. This hopefully gives me enough health to kill another guy, and hopefully you could then go through and ace a team with Reaper. It got removed from the game. I actually can't even remember why it was in particular removed from the game. I think it was just a bit clunky or something. I actually just don't remember in particular why Reaper's Soul Reaving got removed. Anyway, it's back in perk form. It might have also just been because it was kind of shit, to be honest with you. So perhaps that's the note that you need. Anyway, from a design point of things, it does change the way you'd play. It's probably only situationally good on situations where the opposing team plays somewhat close together so that you can collect the orbs more reliably and go from orb to person to, orb to person again. So, sure. I give it 3 stars design and 3 stars quality. I don't think it really pushes Reaper forwards too much, but again, it definitely doesn't hinder him, and he could definitely get a bit snowbally with this, with a team that's all working on the same page and killing one person after another. Because remember, it's not just Reaper kills, it's anyone that kills someone, a soul globe comes up. His bigger abilities are Dire Triggers. Use right click to fire a volley with long range accuracy from both Hellfire shotguns. I'm going to be honest with you, I can't really rate this one right now. So I've put 3 stars in the design here, but you really need to see some numbers on this, and it just doesn't show any numbers, so who knows. Reaper obviously has range issues. He has 2 shotguns, and they're not really good for range damage, which means that he relies on his other abilities, which are 2 movement abilities, to get up close and personal, and I think that is fine. I think it's okay that Reaper's kit doesn't have good range damage, so it slightly perturbs me that the perk gives him this. Now, I know I've been saying that I like the perks that maybe, push a bit of his kit that isn't really there, or helps promote something that maybe that hero is lacking. At the same time, I feel like there is a certain subset of caricature heroes that have such strong strengths in one area that you have to put a weakness in another area. I think Widowmaker is another good example of this. She has such insane long-range damage, it's like caricature-like damage. You can't let her be good at close range either. It's just not something you can do. Similarly, Reaper is so good at close range, you can't let him have big range damage because it's just not fair. Like, why would you just not play Reaper everywhere? And if you're a Reaper player, maybe that's what you want, but we'll have to see the numbers on this. All I'll say about this is Reaper's Hellfire shotguns each do 100 damage on a shot. So if you're filing 2 together, I'd assume it's 216 damage, but I don't know how it clumps out. I also don't know if it's a hit scan or if it's a projectile. The way I'm kind of seeing this is I'm hoping it's like Hog's old right click. It basically is Reaper, that type of thing, which is a hard to hit projectile. And it doesn't do super long range damage, but maybe it helps Reaper catch someone that is running away from them. And it's a skill shot. If that's the case, I'm fine with it. It costs you 2 ammo as well to do it, I assume, because you're firing from both shotguns. And I think Reaper gets, is it 8 shots Reaper gets before he has to reload? Yeah, I think that could potentially work. It has to be a pretty high skill check, though, for Reaper to get a bit of extra range, in my opinion. So we'll actually see this one. I didn't see anyone testing this either, so I really have no metric. If you saw some testing of it and you know how it works, just let me know in the comments. Ravenous Wraith is his other major. Leaving Wraith form grants 40% additional lifesteal for 3 seconds. Again, I think this is a pretty cool change. It potentially reworks the way that you would use your operations as Reaper. I feel like normally you Shadow Step in, do some damage, and then you Wraith form out. I think that's like the classic base loop of Reaper, and you Wraith into your team or behind cover or to a health pack, something like that. Now, because of the Wraith form giving 40% additional lifesteal, you might want to Wraith onto another person. You may also want to initiate with Wraith form. Maybe you initiate with Wraith form, you just fade into an opponent, you blast them for insane lifesteal damage, so you're just not going to die for those 3 seconds. Pardon me. And if they live through this and you're starting to take damage, Shadow Step early, you Shadow Step away, it reloads your gun, and you're out to safety. So it gives you a different way of playing it. And I always like this about old DPS Doomfist, that all of his abilities were movement-based and all of them dealt damage. So it just let you combo the abilities in really unique ways for like certain situations. And I thought it was a really cool playstyle. And slowly Reaper is kind of getting this playstyle. Maybe not quite as showy and flashy as Doomfist or DPS Doomfist had, but, you know, it's at least somewhat interesting. So again, I gave this 4 stars design and 4 stars quality. I think it's actually a pretty solid change. 40% lifesteal is insane. And if you could combine this, like, for, you know, you go into Wraith form, and if your team can follow you up when you come out of the Wraith form, so that, you know, you don't have to go back into cover again, they're coming with you to help you. It's really scary. You could make Reaper the spearhead of that attack, so for rush comps, I think it's a pretty good change. I gave Reaper overall a B. I think it's a pretty solid change, but let me see the dire triggers at some point before I fully commit to the B. It could be like B-, it could also be like C-, depending on how good or bad it is from a design standpoint. Then we get to Sojourn. Extended mag is a minor. Maximum ammo increased by 15. Boring. Really, really boring. It's just like a flat buff to her DPS, because it means she has to reload slightly less. It's just super boring. Like, yeah, I kind of wish it said, and again, I'll give you this one for free, dev team. I wish it gave her more ammo. Let's say it gave her like 45 ammo, and then did less damage on the gun. It turns it more like to an SMG type thing. At least then you're changing like the metrics some way that it's better in certain circumstances. Like, you might want the burst damage into, you know, a comp that gets up into your face very quickly, but if it's something that's a bit slow and plodding, you might want the longer damage over time to break a shield, for example. So, I think that'd be a more interesting way to do an extended magazine than just giving people 15 ammo. Really boring. Don't like it. By the way, I think it's actually really strong because it increases the DPS, and Sojourn's pretty strong right now, so I actually gave it 4 stars in quality. It definitely pushes it in a positive direction. Its only issue is that it's going up against Overcharge. Railgun's maximum energy is increased by 50%, while 50, while Overclock is active. Again, really strong. We've had some issues in recent times with Sojourn, like basically from release, of how good should her right click be. Should it be able to one-shot or shouldn't it be able to one-shot? And she's sort of bounced between being able to one-shot and not being able to one-shot. And classically, when she can't one-shot, she's not good. And they've slowly tried to push some of her power into just her normal primary fire. And we've got to a point now where she's actually pretty strong again. Like, she's seen some play in the meta. I think she can't right-click headshot kill someone right now, but she can do, like, a pretty big amount of damage to them. Also, she's shot thing doesn't decay quite as much, I think. I actually don't know where Sojourn is. Sojourn may be, like, in recent times, the most changed heroes. She's always getting patched. But anyway, the increased 50 energy while Overclock is active means that in her ultimate, she can one-shot squishies again. It's probably fine because it's an ultimate, right? Ultimates are meant to be powerful abilities. Normally when Sojourn overclocks, you're trying to run to cover anyway, so it just potentially gives her a chance of being more likely to confirm a kill in an ultimate, which I think is fair enough on a minor perk. It's also a minor perk tied to an ultimate, so you're not going to see the minor perk that often. I'm kind of fine with it. I think it's a bit dull, but I gave it 2 stars design and 4 stars quality. I think this is also pretty strong. I'd probably take it over the extended mag as well for the most part, because the kill confirming aspect of the overcharge in the ultimate is probably worth more than the additional 15 ammo for just spamming people. Which, by the way, I actually forgot to mention the extended mag, because of the way that railgun works with the mag, that you have to do damage on the primary fire to get the railgun. 50 more ammo is like more rail charge as well, so it all ties in together with Sojourn. It's stealthily like a pretty big buff, actually, 15 more ammo. Then the majors are dual thrusters. Power slide gains an additional charge, and its jump height shifts to lateral movement. Really cool. I kind of like it. I guess there's always this question of, is this too much mobility for a longish range hit scan here? Or I say long, it's more mid-range hit scan for Sojourn. I don't know. We'll have to see it in action. She has some issues right now of being dove, especially in like the recent hazard method. She was kind of like the linchpin that often got broken. That her cooldown on her shift was like, I can't remember now, was it 7 seconds? And hazards was like 6 seconds, so like you'd bait out a Sojourn shift and eventually the hazard shift would come back up again faster than the Sojourn one, and Sojourn would be extremely squishy on that second jump. It may even be longer than that on her shift. I can't remember now. Either way, it made her liable to diving once she used her shift. Now she gets more use of the shift, it makes it way harder to dive. You would situationally take this in situations where you're going up against dive. If you wanted to be in a situation where you wanted to follow your team onto high grounds, on, you know, maps with more high ground, this is obviously a bad change because you won't be able to get up to high grounds you could do before. So it's actually a pretty big trade-off. You can't get into more annoying positions. And against some comps, especially like Rush, for example, you actually might want to, even though they're still intending to like run onto you, you might want to be able to get to the vertical high ground so they can't follow you. So I think it's an interesting change. I gave it 5 stars on design and 4 on the quality. I think it's a really good ability. I think it's a pretty good trade-off. Let's see it in action. Adhesive Siphon is the other major. Disruptor Shot can stick to enemies and generate railgun when dealing damage. Sorry, I just had a stroke again. Yeah, it's okay. It is definitely a different way to use the adhesive shot, the disruptor shot even. Rather than just firing into like a rough area, which does help you because it's a slowing ability to get right clicks on your railgun, you can stick it onto a person, which is a more of a skill shot. You get more energy. It also makes it easy to right click those people as well. To be a bit mean to it, if you do miss, you're probably just still getting something close to what you would have got on the disruptor shot anyway. So there's not really a big value add into it. It's not like you miss the ability, you don't get it anymore. It would still do the disruptor shot like effect, but it just gives it a bit more oomph, right? It is somewhat of a buff into the ability, but also at the same time, it does give you a bit more. It gives you a bit more design choice in what you want to do and how you want to play your Sojourn. So I gave this one as well 4 stars in design and 3 stars in the quality. I think it might be a bit weaker. You actually don't get too much railgun charge either. I think it was like 36% you got, or at least from what I saw in the early streams. So it's pretty minor versus just ass blasting them, but you're going to be more likely to ass blast them if you have the Adhesive Siphon on them. So maybe I'm undervaluing it a bit. Maybe it's also a really strong ability, but you're certainly not going to want to take Adhesive Siphon, or you're less likely to take Adhesive Siphon into extremely high mobile comps. And actually, just as a whole package, it's actually quite nice the way the major perks work, that one's good against dive, and I think one is not great into dive. So it's not like both perks were like good versus dive. I didn't really mention any of this because I've not super gone that into detail about it, but if they both were in the same situation good, then obviously one would always be better than the other one, so it'd be a bad design choice overall. But these ones like complement one another in what they're trying to do. Anyway, I gave Sojourn a B, but it's a very high B. It was like a B+. She's only somewhat like down by her minors being very, very weak. I think if her minors were much stronger, I would have pushed her into the A bracket. Soldier. Soldier has recycled pulse munitions. Helix rockets reload 15 ammo if they damage an enemy. Yeah, sure. It's a different way to play Soldier. Is it a good way to play Soldier? I'm not sure. I get the feeling that most times when you're playing Soldier, you want to hit someone with a Helix rocket and then finish them off with your primary fire. Like, you get the jump on them with the right click right for a big burst of damage. They try and run away from you before you kill them. And then you tickle them down. Do you ever really want to lead with the primary fire shots to tickle them down and let them know that you're there? And then you hit the right click to get some ammo. Situationally, maybe that's fine for like tanks if you're trying to play frontline Soldier. So, yeah, maybe in certain situations you're fine with that, but I think for the most part, this is kind of not a great perk, but that's fine. Because again, situational, I think is okay. So I've given it 3 stars in design, but in the quality, I think it's pretty weak. For the most part, you probably want to start with Helix into a fight with a 1v1. Maybe as a tank buster, though. That's okay. Field Emergency. Biotic Field's healing is increased by 100% on critical health allies. I believe critical health allies, by the way, is any ally below 50% health, which is when you see the critical indicator if you're playing a support. I actually, Googled this, and there's nothing really, concrete about what a critical health enemy is in the game, but I'm just going to assume for my mind right now that that is the case. When the critical bar shows up as a support, which is below 50% health, that's when you're critical. Yeah, it's, again, okay. It rewards support soldier. It rewards you, all teaming up and grouping together on the biotic field. I think it's probably pretty damn minor. I'm actually just trying to check. I don't think I wrote down the healing per second on soldier. It's not that high, but actually the 100% increase will probably make it beyond, mercy healing, for example. So it's pretty insane if you're fighting in a group together with soldier in the middle of it. So maybe I'm, under-egging this a little bit, but yeah, I don't see it. It does change the playstyle, though. You want to play with your team rather than on a flanking style, so I like it conceptually. And I give it 4 stars on design and 2 stars on quality. Then on mages, he has agility training. Sprint speed is increased by 20%, and reload can be performed while sprint is active. That's huge, right? It lets him reposition faster. It lets him take more aggressive flanks. It makes him a bit harder to punch on the flanks as well, because you can just get away before people try and clear him out. And also, you can do your damage, you then sprint away. And by the time you reach the next position, you've reloaded your gun. So it's really obnoxious to play with soldier like that. It's going to be really good on maps like, Busan. Busan, the one with the drum. I can't remember what it's actually called. Is it called Sanctuary? Where sometimes soldier sees play there, even when soldier's not very viable. And soldier's actually very frequently not being viable in the meta. But because that map has a lot of cover and a lot of ways to surround the central drum, a lot of packs, it was actually quite suitable for soldiers just running around the map, taking disgusting flanks. And it could always go back into hard cover. There's almost always a pack nearby. So, and it was always at perfect range for soldier as well, more to the point. You can't easily get jumped on at that distance. Nor was it sometimes people would play Widowmaker, but it was it was just a bit too short for Widowmaker sightlines. It gave you a bit of chance into the matchup to get a helix off in a few shots and kill the Widow, instead of the Widow just blasting you in the face. And either way, you could just run away from the Widow and take up another angle instead. So, on that type of map, this agility training is going to be so good. You're just going to be a real little pest in the sideline. So, I kind of like this. I've given this 4 stars and 3 stars in quality. The other major is Stim Pack. Biotic Field can be used as a Stim Pack, increasing attack speed and reload speed by 30% while being unhealable for 4 seconds. Chef Kiss. I love it. It's a really good ability. By the way, it's worth noting it says can be used, so you can actually still use your Stim Pack as a Stim Pack. You get to choose. It's a bit like the old Symmetra. Choose between Shield Generator and Teleporter Ultimate. This is back in Overwatch 1, by the way. You get to choose when you use your E to pick up Biotic Field or to use a Stim Pack instead. And if you Biotic Field, you jab your wrist with the old roids, and you start blasting like nobody's business for only 4 seconds. And you get the anti-effect. Now, I do believe that you can be cleansed of the anti-effect right now. I think they said that on the dev team, this is something we're going to watch very intently early. Whether or not this should be uncleansable type of ability. But if you want to queue with a Kiriko, then you could Stim Pack with somewhat gay abandon. Also worth noting, time when soldier in the history of the game has been viable is, I think it's at 20 or 21 damage on his pellets. Soldier becomes a disgusting juggernaut, but if you reduce it by 1, he becomes extremely vanilla. So I think because this has always been the case for soldier, that just pushing this number up and down turns him from a beast to a tiny kitten. I think it's a pretty cool way to try and introduce this. Okay, you're not going to get the damage on the gun at all times, but for a brief 4-second period, you are going to be really powerful, more powerful than you've ever been in the game. But it's going to come at a cost, right? You will not be healable at this point, so you have to be extremely careful, but if you're good at aiming and you take a good angle, you could do some disgusting work. Also works with the ultimate, by the way. You can Stim Pack into the ultimate, and then you're turbocharging your visor for 4 seconds. So I think it's a really cool ability. I love that it can be used between the Biotic Field and the Stim Pack, and I think it gives Soldier something that he would really, really like, aka DPS. I've given it 5 stars design and 4 stars quality. I think this would really push Soldier forward. And I actually think on certain maps now, Soldier is probably viable, like very viable, which I think is good. Soldier's classically been this hero that's kind of like been, not forgotten, but he's almost like the training bot hero, right? He's just very easy to work. He's the most like, he's got the most transferable properties from any other shooter. He has a run ability, he has a shoot ability, he has a grenade. That's all you like need. And he has aimbot, which is great for all the Call of Duty players. Anyway, I gave him a B, and we'll move on. Swiftly move on to Sombra. Sombra has a minor viral efficacy. Virus's cooldown is reduced by 3 seconds when an enemy affected by virus is eliminated. It's horrible. I don't really like this because how does this change the way you play Sombra? I mean, you're virusing people anyway, and surely the intention of virusing someone is to kill them. So all it means is if you confirm the kill through a virus, your virus comes back up again sooner. Virus's cooldown, I believe, is 6 seconds. So it's just like a full-out buff to virus. Like, you get to virus every 3 seconds, assuming you keep killing people. I guess it somewhat promotes you to play this assassin Sombra style, so it's not completely without, like, design philosophy, but I think it's a pretty weak ability. I gave it the benefit of the doubt. I gave it 2 stars in design. I think it's very close to just being a flat-out buff to the ability. I don't think it's a 4-star quality. I think it's actually really scary for a Sombra to just be in the backline continuously throwing viruses at, like, every 3 seconds at you. They could really, like, pump out a lot of damage. It does require some eliminations, but I might have been a bit, like, I don't know, high when I did the quality on this one. I think on ladder, maybe 4 stars, especially at low ranks, this is going to be really toxic. Probably at the high level that you can deal with the first virus, you don't die, so you don't get the effect, which means the perk does nothing, so I've cooked too much on this one. It's probably actually lower than 4, but I'll stick with my guns right now. Alright, we also have Control Alt Escape. Teleporting with translocator while at critical health initiates passive health regeneration. I assume again this is below 50% health that you get this effect. It's pretty minor. It's not bad. It doesn't really change how you would do anything though. I guess it means that on maps where you've not got great packs, because normally you would translocate towards either cover or a pack or both, ideally. It does mean if you do this on a map where there's not a great pack position, maybe it gives you enough health to get to the pack before you get chased down and you have to blow the entirety of the enemy team. So it's like a minor change, but I think it's extremely minor in this situation. Maybe you do get back into fights faster, which means you can do more damage and build up more ult charge. So, and at the end of the day, I feel like Sombra right now is really just an EMP bot. You want to build EMPs as fast as possible. Hence why people have got the Sombra 76 playstyle where you just play in your front line, don't fuck around in the back line, and just build EMPs as quickly as you possibly can. And that's a viable playstyle for Sombra. So, I guess it's pushing this again towards being, I try and play a bit more aggressively Sombra. Sure. Again, I gave it 2 stars in design and 3 on the quality, just because it doesn't really change the loop for Sombra. What does change the loop, though, is White Hat. Hat can be used on allies to restore 100 health over 2 seconds. That's right, you can play your Sombra as a healer. I don't mind the idea of this, and also it's a bit of a knockback to OG Sombra, where I feel like she was always initiated in the game with the intention that she was the DPS/support hero. Back then, there was no role lock, it was open queue, effectively. And I think in like very, very early Overwatch, they were trying to play the game of, what if we make heroes that kind of like transcend roles a little bit? Like, what if we have a tank that is also sort of like a support? And we ended up with like Brigitte type situations. And what if we had like a tank that is somewhat of a damage and we ended up with like a Doomfist type situation? I don't think it's quite that clear cut to draw those comparisons, but I certainly think Sombra was like that because she used to get ult charge off hacked health packs, and that counted as her healing, so effectively, she was like a support, but she didn't have a healing tool. She just like supported you by making the battlefield more healy for you. Let's put it that way. And it used to be disgustingly broken. In fact, what you used to do, in case you've never seen this before, and go try and find the clips of this because it's really entertaining. What she would do is she would hack a really, really important health pack. Let's say this is, again, this probably isn't good for Overwatch 2 players, but Anubis second and Volskaya second, where I think were the 2 big ones, where they have health packs very close to the point. I'm trying to think of a modern day version of this. Let's just say Oasis, the city center point where there's a mega, not too far away from the point. So they'd hack the pack, and you were just trying to fight around that pack. Now it was better in these other 2 maps because you could fight on the point within range of the pack, pretty close range of the pack as well. You would win the fight because you had the pack, and you opposing team didn't have the pack, so they didn't have quite as much healing as you did. And at the end of the fight, the supports wouldn't heal people, and everyone would run onto the pack and heal off the pack, because it would build an EMP for Sombra every fight. So after the first fight, Sombra would always have an EMP. And it was disgusting. It was so unbelievably broken. So much so that if you were playing these 2 CP maps and you capped the first point, the attacking Sombra would run as fast as is humanly possible, even with like ab speed, I think, if you're running Lucio in the comp, to try and get to these packs before the enemy Sombra would respawn at the second point, to hack them before they could get out of spawn and hack them. So you would end up having fights on the second point while the first one was capping, potentially, because this hacking pack was so important. If the attackers hacked that pack, you were fucked. You were going to lose that fight, probably, because it was so much of a big advantage to build up EMPs faster and have hacked health packs. Hence why her kit was moved away from that support playstyle, because it was just too strong. It kind of nods back to this. Obviously, it's not through hacking health packs, it's now just through hacking allies. Do I think this is good? No, I think it's pretty shit, honestly. It's a major ability. It's... Anyway, you look at this, it's 50 health per second, right? Mercy's heal beam is 60, I think. They're both single target. And Mercy's heal beam is basically instant. You click the target, the beam comes out. Hack takes a bit of time, right? How long is it? It's like a second for hack to come through. Actually, I think it's like 0.65 seconds and then 0.4 something, where you don't actually have to be targeting him anymore. Or like, you don't have to be in line of sight or something. I can't remember. Hack's such a weird ability. And then it just goes off regardless. So it's around a second, let's put it that way. So yeah, I think this is super weak. I think it's actually like unbelievably Giga Troll as an ability to take. It's funny, but I don't think it's particularly good. Also, there's potential like annoying aspects in the design, because if you're trying to hack like a backline hero as you're doing the dive, you know what this game's like with like interacting with things you want to interact with? It's always going to flick off and hit like your tracer or something that's in part of the dive, and you're like, holy shit, I don't want to heal my tracer. No, I would, and you just fuck up the dive because you've hacked a tracer. Your tracer, this is, and healed them for 100 health for no reason. Also, people are obviously going to play this as Sombra Weaver, or what you want to call it as. People are going to play, I'm playing support Sombra, I don't use my gun, which is going to be really shit because it's not good healing. So I think for all of these reasons that it's going to create a really toxic playstyle because it's so shit, people are going to try and make it work. I think it's not a good design choice. So I took some design marks of it. I have given it 3 stars design because theoretically, assuming the community isn't an asshole, which unfortunately it is, I think it's okay. It does make you think about the way you would use Sombra. Also changes how like you would interact with like your positioning and that type of thing. But I think it's really shit. Finally, it's stacked overflow. Hack silence duration is increased by 100%, but its range is decreased by 30%. I can't lie, this hero's a ball bag. I fucking hate Sombra. I just think it's so unfun to play against. I really don't like playing against silence abilities in a hero shooter where it's kind of hard to cleanse the silence. There are ways to do it now, but man, my life has been soured by Sombra, honestly, especially as a tank player, and I typically play tank. Sombra's just hiding behind corners and just constantly hacking the tank was such a fucking unfun thing to play against, and there was not a lot you could do on a lot of tanks. You sort of just hoped your team would help you out a little bit and, you know, occasionally shoot the Sombra. They never did, so I've got a bit of bias against this hero. Anyway, increasing the duration is... It's frustrating, but at the very least, I do appreciate from a design standpoint, you have got a risk-reward involved in it because you have to be 30% closer, which is pretty hard. It's going to be very map-specific, the situations where you can actually be within 30% closer distance to the person you're hacking and get it off. I can't tell if it's actually going to be good or not. I suspect it's going to be bad. I think the juice won't be worth the squeeze on this one because you're just more likely to get like ass blasted. And actually, one of the issues with the current version of Sombra is because of the way the translocator works, where it's very visible where she's going, she can just get ran down by a lot of the cast of heroes. So if she's like 30% closer to your hero, she's like 30% closer to the people that are going to run it down. So I think it's actually pretty bad, but it's at least interesting. So I give it 4 stars and 3 stars quality. I don't think it's going to move Sombra like particularly in an interesting direction. Let's put it that way. Not saying that Sombra doesn't see any play. She sees very little play right now, in part because Ball is somewhat viable right now, but she's really played as Sombra 76, and I don't think any of these perks actually push you away from really trying to play that playstyle. And actually, I'd say she's got some sort of weakness. Even though I gave Stack Overflow a 3, I still think it's actually quite a weak perk. So I think quality-wise, her perk, it's actually quite poor. So I'd like to see what people do with Sombra, though. Maybe I'm actually underestimating the increased silence by 100%. Maybe that lets you blast a hero. So you assassinate someone from the backline, let's say, rather than worrying about, you know, hacking a tank or something in the middle of 5 people, you just wait for someone to be playing on their own on an off angle. Let's say it's this soldier that's running about like a fucking drug addict with, needles and stuff in their arms, and you just hack them on the flank. You can be 30% closer to them. They're very unlikely to be able to just like completely blast you away, especially if you're playing vaguely smartly with the Sombra, and they're silenced for a bit more time, and maybe that's enough to pick up the kill. Anyway, I give her a C. I think the stuff's fine, but it might need tweaking on the numbers. Then we get to Symmetra. Symmetra's got a minor perk of Sentry Capacity. She gets 1 more charge. Again, I remember the old days. 6 turrets. I don't want to go back to the old days. I think giving her just 1 additional turret is kind of not pointless. I just think it's bad. Bad in the sense that it doesn't really change the playstyle. It just makes it more unfun to play against, so I really don't like the change. I don't think it's like a particular design philosophy behind it other than we needed a minor perk. This is kind of minor, right? You could argue, and I don't think this is a super good argument, that you can put a turret in 1 additional angle so you have some scouting on 1 additional angle, which means she's better at scouting. Those things are almost always around points slowing people down, and it's a slow effect that's really obnoxious. They're above a door that you have to walk through, so you have to look up and shoot them. It's just going to be used in a toxic way. It's going to be used to make car washes, right? Let's be honest with you. This is going to improve the quality of car washes, and I don't think that's a playstyle that we should really be like pushing back again. So I think 1 star in design, 3 stars in quality. It doesn't really, I don't think it significantly pushes Sim forward, but at the same time, it obviously isn't pulling it backwards. So her other one is advanced teleportation, and teleport's range is increased by 50%. That does have a bit of divine philosophy thinking behind it. Sim had a bit of a limitation by how fast she could TP. On super long range maps, she couldn't TP people far enough. Now she can. On Circuit Royale, she'd be probably able to TP a team from that first corner to the second corner, which means if you want to play Cloudy Rhine Rush style comps, you could absolutely get on that Widowmaker in the back of the map and just beat her brains out. So, yeah, situationally this could be pretty good. So I'm okay with this being a minor perk and the design and the quality of it. I gave it 3 on both. The Mages, she has perfect alignment. Primary Fire's range increases by 15% with each additional charge level. Bearing in mind, it's not just at the second level you're going to have 30%, right? Because it's not additive. It'll be 100, then 115, then 15% of 115. Which, if I'd been smart, I would have wrote this number down, but I assume it's around like 132, 133, that type of thing. It's going to be slightly more than you think it's going to be. Either way, I'm splitting hairs a little bit here. I don't know how to feel about this one. It's kind of weird, is how I'll say it. Because obviously Sim's range is close, right? That's her preferred range. She wants to beam down someone in front of her and just keep beaming them without, threat of her life. Let's put it that way. So she's normally used in Rush, right? Use TP to cross some sort of gap without taking any damage on the transition. It stops like dive comps doing something on the transition to you that would cause you to use cooldowns that otherwise you would need to stay alive on the point. And it maybe lets you get to the objective before the dive can interact with you, so they can't bait out cooldowns before you're on the point. And hopefully that lets you cap the point and start getting objective time before you get picked off slowly one after another. So, as I said, you kind of want to just be at close range with an opposing tank to make the primary fire work. And you get rewards for being at close range with another hero, with your primary fire just going up in damage. Does the range matter that much at the end of the day? Because you always had catch with your TP, right? Because normally you would break your TP after your first initial movement, like across the map. And by the time the fight is ending, you're probably getting your TP back up again, roughly, and you're probably with a Lucio or something. So I don't think catch was ever an issue. And I don't think the additional range you're going to get on the beam, maybe I'm, again, under-egging this a little bit, but I don't think it suddenly means you're going to start sniping Widowmakers, like, across the map. It's not that type of range increase. You'd still probably be right-clicking people at that distance, which is the other way for Sim to catch, so I guess all it does is if you try to run away as the tank, that Sim could beam you down a bit more. It's, like, harder to escape from her. But it always is, because she has, like, fucking 4 turrets now that are slowing you down, so I think it's fine from a design point, but I just don't see where exactly you would ever use this, I guess is my issue. So I put 2 stars in the design and 2 stars in the quality. It's mainly because I don't see why you would use this. But maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a huge Sim player, let's put it that way. I don't think anyone particularly is a huge... Well, actually, I take it back. There are some people that are Sim players. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. The other one is Shield Battery, which is also a bit of a weird one, to be honest with you. Sim regenerates 20 shields per second while within 10 meters of a teleporter. She has to be within line of sight of it as well, just in case you're wondering. I did see this on the reveals. It forms like a mercy beam to her, so if you go fully around a wall from where it is, you don't get it anymore. I can't but think this is kind of poo for another major ability. 20 shields per second isn't like nothing, right? It is some form of tangible regeneration. For the most part, though, when Symmetra TPs across a gap, the TP is destroyed by people shooting the TP at the other end where, you started. So it's not even like you could TP onto point and then shield it with the Reinhardt, because somebody's going to be shooting that TP at the other end. Especially if you get scouted at somewhat, because you only get like one surprise with maybe the Symmetra play, but after they've seen Symmetra once, they know it's coming again. And you're going to see Symmetra more than once probably by the time you get the major perk, because they're not getting the major perk in the first fight, right? So you're going to know this is coming, and all you have to do is destroy the TP, and it denies the 20 shields per second, and it denies your major perk. It seems really weak. The other thing you could do is break your TP, as I said, wait for it to, like, come back off cooldown, which actually is more reasonable if you're on the defensive side of things and you want to fight, where you might not need the TP to, jump across a gap. You could just put a TP basically at your feet and give yourself 20 shields per second regeneration. Honestly, I think it's super weak, though. If you're going to get to that level of, like, because your team's going to have to sort of protect it, like, they're going to have to treat it as El Presidente to some degree. It is annoying to kill. The thing has quite a lot of health, but it's only benefiting her, and it's only benefiting her for, like, a 2/5 of them, no, not even 2/5, a third of a Mercy Beam. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. I think it's pretty average. So, it feels a bit odd. Let's put it that way. It's just odd. So, again, I've given it 3 stars design because there is, like, something to think about with it, but I think the thinking is, like, it's not good. That's the thinking you're going to be doing. Anyway, I gave it 2 stars as well. Overall, I've given it a D. I think a kit is really kind of weird. And actually, I'd probably say for Sim, D- even. I think it was verging on an E. Torbjorn, he has the perk Craftsman. Forge Hammer can restore armor health to allies. Turret's repairs heal is increased by 25%. Okay, I've got to be honest with you. When I first saw this, I was like, meme. Has to be a meme, right? As I slowly, like, delved into numbers, I was like, hang on a minute, is this a meme or not? Because I was, like, looking into it, and his hammer is 50 healing per swing, but he swings at more than a swing per second, so it actually works out, assuming it's the rate that he would heal a turret, at 71 armor per second. Mercy's beam is 60 healing per second, and you have to bear in mind that armor is a resource that reduces incoming damage as well, so it's better than actual just healing. So Torp's single target healing with the Craftsman, I think, is better than Mercy. However, obviously, Mercy can stand a little bit further away from her target, whereas Torbjorn is banging that fucking Reinhardt on the ass, right? His cheeks are clapping at all times. And obviously you're not shooting with the Torbjorn at that point, so it's a pretty big downside to it all. And all likelihood is, you're going to your Rhine v Rhine combat and you've got your own little fucking Torbjorn medical healing you with, the ass blasting. And the enemy Rhine just swings twice on you and your Torbjorn just falls over. So I think it is a meme strat, but it's kind of funny. I've given it 3 stars in design because I don't know, maybe I was drunk at that point. I have actually been like hallucinating and stuff, and like I've been really ill recently, so maybe this was a hallucinogenic moment. I want to see the numbers just to make sure this isn't actually good, so I put on it I need to see the numbers, but I think it's gonna be garbage. But if you're playing a team of full heroes with armor on him, so maybe you can just like blast, I don't know, a Bastion for example on a flank and stand behind cover and just make him an unkillable juggernaut. Maybe that's actually legitimate, I don't know, so it's funny nonetheless. It's really funny. Fully loaded, activating Overload fully refills Rivet Gun's ammo. Yeah, sure, that's fine. It changes maybe your ordering of using your Overload to let you try and greed a little bit more to get, I just want 1 additional shot on the Rivet Gun because if I Overload, I get the ammo back. Increases your DPS for that moment, not only just getting the Overload, which increases your DPS, but you get the refund on the Rivet Gun. So overall, you've had to reload less, which means you're getting more damage per time, or at least that time period. So yeah, it's fine. I've given it design 2 and quality 3. It's a bit boring is all I'll say about this. Again, it's one of those things where I don't think situationally you would really care what you're fighting into to take that. It's just something that is good all around. It just changes the order and how you'd use abilities. You'd probably rarely lead now with I'd say rarely. It makes you not necessarily want to lead with Overload, but does Torb really lead with Overload that often? I don't know. Its major is Anchor Bolts. Deployed turrets' throw range is increased by 50% and can now attach to walls and ceilings. This is really cool as well. There's actually quite a lot of design stuff you can do with this. Not only can you play it as, like, I put defensive turrets in places which you would never ever expect them to be, which is just annoying to deal with, right? Especially at long ranges. You could also use it offensively. You could hold your turret rather than using it defensively and having it set up before the fight begins. You could probably take an angle on the flank. Let's say you're even flanking against a Tracer, and the Tracer is coming to shoot you, and you just launch this turret, and again, 50% increased range. You launch onto a wall behind her, and suddenly this hero is getting shot in the ass while you're shooting her in the front. And as much as the internet tells me that they like this, I don't think she's going to like this. I think she's going to be really upset by this. So I think it really means in 1v1s, Torb's seriously scary. Like, you can't deal with both the turret and him at the same time. It's a scary proposition. You're going to have to send someone else out to help you on Torb flanks. And you trade this for having the turret constantly set down and just poking the team as they walk in. So I kind of like it. I think there's a bit of a design philosophy behind this, and different situations, different comps where you might want to play it as 1v1 expert on the flank, and certain circumstances where you put it on a really annoying angle. So 5 stars design, 3 stars quality. I think it's a really good perk. I like it. I also quite like the other perk, Overloaded Turret. This is a hark back to old Torbjorn. When you overload, it upgrades your turret for 5 seconds, increasing its health and damage. It basically turns your turret into level 3 turret from the past. But instead of it being on an ultimate, it's actually just on your E instead, which is fine, right? Situation makes you want to use your overload, not necessarily in a situation where Torb's about to die, or where you want to just get some big damage off against someone you're blasting. You might want to use it as an enemy team that's all pushing together, because that turret thing on tier 3, and we had this recently in the old Overwatch Classic 6v6 mode. I played a bunch of Torbjorn, and people are just not used to it, because again, they haven't played the game as long as I have. They're not used to, like, not pushing into tier 3 Torb turret. It is a nightmare thing to push into. It did so much damage. Like, it's crazy, crazy damage. And also, it's quite a lot of health. I think, yeah, it increases health as well. So, yeah, it's hard to kill it. You just can't push into it. It's too much damage. And this was the classic thing people used to do in 6v6. They would trade a support off for a Torbjorn. And often this was the flex support would go and play Torbjorn on maps where you had to, like, hold, like, the first point corner in Gibraltar. Because if you could get up to your turret cycle at level 3, it was so hard to push into level 3 turret. It basically gave you a free fight win, so... it's not quite as long as the old Torble, I believe. It's a short bit of time, and you have to trade a resource for it. You're trading your overload, which might be good opportunity to use for the turret, but maybe not good for you. So, again, I really like the design philosophy of this. I think it's a really solid build. I've given it 4 stars on both design and quality. It could easily have been 5 in design. I think it's like a 4.5 type deal. And overall, I gave him B, but don't get it twisted. This was like a B+. I actually probably should give him an A. Very solid minors, pretty solid majors. Then we get to Tracer. I'm going to be honest with you. When I saw the perk stuff like being a thing and being announced, and I was like thinking through all the heroes and like what perks could be before I saw the perk list that, you know, the Blizzard posted out as like this insanely large image, I was always a bit worried with Tracer, because I feel like Tracer's the ultimate, like, balanced hero in the game. Not in the sense that I think she's, like, not viable everywhere and, you know, that type of thing. She's obviously strong, but her kit is extremely svelte, as I'll call it. Like, it all works perfectly together. She's got an incredibly high skill ceiling, and because of that, if you're a really good player, you can get a lot of value from her and make her extremely strong. And classically, Tracer has always been an extremely strong hero. So I was a bit worried with how they're going to introduce the perks, and I think my worry was, like, valid after I saw the perks. So her first one in the minor is Blink Packs. Health Packs restore 1 Blink charge. It's kind of... it's good, but it's kind of bad from a design point in my point of view. Tracer's this really high skill hero because of the... She needs to have good aim, she has to have great movement, also she has to, like, be vaguely aware of, like, you know, places where she can, like, take some time off to start restoring her blinks back. Very rarely do you see, like, good Tracers, like, double blink and triple blink into areas. Unless they're trying to pulse bomb someone and, you know, catch them on the... surprise, sorry. you sometimes see Tracers taking really odd blinking paths, and it's just because they blink into an area where they can stand for a few seconds to get the blink charge back up, so they can then use another blink to get to the health pack, and have enough then blink charge after they've got the health pack to blink out again, so they're not caught with the pants down on the health pack. This just lets you play with your pants down, really. You could, like, double blink onto that health pack, you take the health pack, you get the blink charge back, which lets you escape. It just makes Tracer really fucking hard to kill. And one of the nice things about Tracer was that if she actually misplayed the matchups, she was very catchable. Like, and she's a squishy, very squishy hero even. So I think everything that adds to her survivability sort of removes from her skill level, so to speak. It just makes, like, the general, like, player much better at Tracer. So, and it makes the people that were really good at Tracer, like, basically unkillable, right? So I sort of don't like it. It doesn't really change the way you'd play it. If I was going to be generous to Tracer, on maps where there's better health packs, this ability becomes better. And on maps with bad health packs, you probably don't take this. So there is a little bit of choice philosophy in it, but I think overall it's just a solid ability to take. And I gave it 2 stars in design and 4 stars in quality. I think it's really strong to get another blink on Tracer. And Tracer already plays around packs, so. She also has Blast from the Past, which increases the pulse bomb's radius by 50%. I think this takes it back to what the old radius used to be. It's fine again. It means that Tracer can get more value from pulse bomb for missing pulse bombs. I prefer it to be a situation where the radius went up but the damage went down, if you know what I mean. So that you could, like, combo it to try and kill multiple people together. Just increasing it by 50% means that if you're just going to miss pulse bombs, you're more likely to get killed. So, like, again, it rewards failure in my standpoint. Again, there are some reasons to take this in certain comps over other things. Like, maybe you don't take the blink packs because the map's not got a great health pack at the point you're playing on. And also, they're playing clumped together in some sort of bunker comp, and you can just pulse bomb one and maybe get 2 kills with it. So, there's a bit of design choice, but I think it's pretty bad. So, again, it's 2 stars design, 3 stars quality. I think you'd probably prefer the additional survivability of the blink charge. On the majors, you then have Flashback, and I think this is the one that's caused the most gripe in the community, honestly. Recall restores all blink charges. This is so disgustingly OP that it's crazy. I think a good Tracer play would almost be unkillable at that point. Like, it's so unbelievable. You basically have to predict the recall perfectly, and have someone to lock her down at the instantaneous moment that she comes back out of, like, recall animation. Then you could catch her. But it's not even just what people think it is. Like, Tracer's, 3 blinks. Recall gives you another 3 blinks back. You have to remember that these Tracer players aren't just fucking sending all the blinks out at, like, Mach 10 speed. They will blink, wait a little bit, like, shoot someone. Blink again, wait a bit behind cover, shooting them, blink again. And by the time they've done all of this, they've probably made a 4th blink. Then they'll use that blink again. Then they'll flashback, they'll recall, get 3 blinks back, but they've used 4 already, and then they'll do the same thing again. It's basically 8 blinks is flashback. And that's going to make Tracer nigh on unkillable, I think, for good players. So I think it's an extremely strong ability. And it's a strong ability that, like, is there a situation where you wouldn't want to take this? I don't think there's that many. I think it's a really strong ability. So yeah, I think it's disgustingly strong, but really lacking in design. So again, I've given this 2 stars on design, 5 star on quality. I could have been mean to this and given it 1 star on design. I probably should have done, to be honest with you. But you've got lucky today, Tracer. I've rounded you up to 2 rather than rounding you down to 1. The other ability also works with Recall, by the way. It's Quantum Entanglement. Recall grants 50 overhealth that decays over time. I hate this ability as well, partially because I think it's just worse than Flashback in almost every case. But the one case where it's better than Flashback is really unsatisfying for me, because it basically means that if you predict the blink as the opponent, and that's like one of Tracer's weaknesses, right? She blinks back to a point which you could calculate if you're really paying attention in the game. It requires a lot of skill to work this out. And if you get that payoff, Tracer gets 50 health and doesn't get killed by whatever you're doing to, like, you shoot her in the head, she lives. It suddenly makes her not a squishy hero at that moment in time. It's really annoying. Like, it removes that other punishment from her kit. So I feel like everything is just removing any way that Tracer could have been punished and just making her this hero that can be everywhere and always be shooting people and always escaping. I think it's really bad, this design on the kit. But to be fair, her kit was so svelte to begin with. Like, I think it would have been really hard to do a perk system for Tracer. And I think that's proven to be the case. So I gave it 2 stars on design again and 2 on quality, which takes it into a D. If I put her as an E hero, I think I would actually struggle to actually come up with anything better. So I'd actually say again in the comments, if you want to let me know what you think you should have done with Tracer, or what you would like to do with Tracer, let me know in the comments below. I think it's actually a really hard kit. I think it's just, her design is so perfect that the perks were always going to be awkward with her. Venture. She has Seismic Sense as a miner. While underground, Venture can sense enemies within 25 meters. That's really strong. It basically gives her vision, in case you're wondering, like sights, like Sonic Arrow or the Widow sights. As long as she's underground and within 25 meters of people, that makes it way more easy for Venture to set up plays where she's going to one-shot someone, like she's lurking Venture playstyle. Hides behind a corner underground, pops back up as they come around the corner, drill dash into them, clobber them, dead. And you can set that up and guarantee you get the hero you want to get with the Seismic Sense. It's also pretty good into invisible heroes, so if you're going up against a Sombra, you might want to just grab Seismic Sense and just try and hide underground occasionally as they are trying to set up and enter the point, because you might catch a Sombra, which is really good intel. So, I actually quite like the idea of the design of this. It might be a bit strong, but I'm not sure it is. We'll see. Anyway, I give it 4 stars design, 4 stars quality. Maybe it is, I don't know. I feel like, again, as a minor perk, it's like on the fence. It might be a bit strong for a minor, but it probably would have been a bit weak for a major, so we'll see. She's also got Excavation Exhilaration. While Tectonic Shock is active, which is the ultimate, cooldowns refresh 300% faster. Yeah, this is cool again. It changes how you use the ult. I think a lot of people, when they get the Tectonic Shock, just hard swing a corner and then just start blasting the ground as quickly as possible and just hitting everyone in their way. Players at higher levels are normally a bit smarter that they play around the shock and don't all just stand behind the tank in main. So you don't get as much value doing that at high levels. So what some Ventures will do will be repossession during the Tectonic Shock. This lets you and rewards you for trying to repossession during a shock. So rather than just blasting all 4 shots immediately, you might be able to drill dash up into a high ground or something. You could shift, get your drill dash back up, drill dash again, and you get one more use of the shock because everything came up 300% faster. I think it's really cool. It lets you just catch people that run away from maybe your first blast. Like, you blast it down main, everyone's delta splits, and you're like, holy shit, I'm hunting them down, and you just chase them down with your abilities and just keep finishing your ult off on them. I think it's a cool idea. So again, situationally, you'll definitely take it, and in other situations, you probably wouldn't want to take this. So again, 4 stars design, and I've put 3 stars in quality. I think it's still struggled to catch people on the exhilaration, but maybe I'm wrong. The major quirks are Smart R Excavator. The Smart Excavator's range is increased by 25%. It's a bit boring again. It does sort of fill this window of, does it really change the playstyle of Venture if you do this, or is it just buffing the hero that she already does this stuff anyway? And actually argue in this case, it does actually change it slightly because it makes Venture a bit better at pokier styles, because her range on every ability is pretty weak, right? With the exception of the ultimate, which is still pretty medium, but it's pretty weak on everything. So giving a Primeval a bit more range just lets her play a bit more pokey. It's kind of like the opposite of the lurking play style, and I think that's the better way to play Venture, is you sort of lurk behind corners and do the full combo with drill dash into clobber and into a shot with a Smart R Excavator, in which case this doesn't really matter because you're at close range anyway. So it's really, if you can't do this like lurking style, maybe the map is a bit more open, perhaps you just take the increased range on the Excavator, you do the thing where you burrow under someone, you burrow out of them, they try to escape, and this additional range lets you have catch so they can't get away from you. I kind of see that as the way, but again, it's a bit lazy, I'll put it that way. I did give it 3 stars in the design and 3 stars in the quality though, but I think this is a 3-star that was kind of like a 2.5 star on the quality. I do think on the design, the quality I do think is actually close to a 3. I think it's actually meaningful to have a bit more range on that left click. The other major is Covered in Dirt. Dealing damage with Clobber, which is the melee, grants up to 30 Explorer's Resolve shields. Venture gets shields anytime she uses an ability. Clobber wasn't an ability, it's a quick melee, so you get shields for it, you now get shields for it. It just makes it a bit more unkillable. It's just midway through this combo, she's basically going to be unkillable. You have to stop her with some sort of CC ability, so it does change the way that you play Venture. It really promotes you playing this lurking play style. You'd only do it in certain circumstances where you can actually, like, you know, take someone away from the herd and kill them off, you know, off camera. If you can't do that, it maybe is better to just take the range instead and poke a bit more, but I think it's a really solid major. I think it's probably better than the Smart R Excavator for the most part. Anyway, I gave it 2 stars on the design and 4 stars on the quality. It's a bit boring design-wise. Also, it kind of just improves what I think is already the good part of her kit, so Yeah, it's a bit middling. Anyway, speaking of middling, I gave this hero a C as well. I think it's fine. Fine. Then we get to Widowmaker. So Widowmaker, and I think Widowmaker is the final DPS. I think we're finally up to the supports after this. She has a minor perk of Scoped Efficiency. Scoped shots cost 3 ammo instead of 5. Not gonna lie, I don't think it's playing Widowmaker I've ever had an issue with ammo before. Or never really felt like I've had an issue with ammo before, so I think this solves a problem that isn't there. So I'm not a huge fan of the Scoped Efficiency. As a result, I've given it 1 star in both. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, like, super hardcore Widow players, like Quartz, is like, oh, I wish I had, you know, a little bit more ammo, because then I would kill everyone in the game. But yeah, I certainly never felt like I had that issue. The other minor perk is Focused Aim. Scope shots charge 50% faster during infrared sight. That's her ultimate, by the way. Yeah, you would always take this one. You'd never take the other one. This is just so much better. One of the things about infrared sight is it's kind of a bad but good ult. It's an ult you have to respect, especially at the highest of high levels. And it's so good that when people pop it, a lot of teams just run away from it. Like, they take cover for the 15 seconds, whatever it is that it's up. And or you pop your own sight, right, to counter it so you both can see what one another is doing to see if you're actually peeking the angle or not. It's that type of thing. It's sort of like, you know, it becomes like a dead match type thing for that moment. If you can get a faster scope shot, it means that you could potentially push infrasight and get a kill before someone is able to scurry off into their cubby hole. So it's actually pretty spooky. Even just like your ultimate is making a shot faster, that's a pretty spooky thing to have for Widow. So it's interesting from a design perspective. It's actually quite like, it's a really high reward play. There's not really a risk associated with it, but you really get one chance, right? Because they'll just go into cover, and then your perk is kind of minor, so to speak. You're not going to get any more value from it. So, yeah, I put it as a 1-star design. I think it's just, again, buffing something that doesn't really change anything else about the kit too much. I think it's slightly better than the other one, by the way, from design. So I'd probably get it like 1.5 rather than like a pure 1. I think this is the better one. So quality 3. A major one is Escape Plan. Scope shot hits reduce grappling hooks cooldown by up to 4 seconds. I'm scared. I don't like the idea of this. Again, I talked about caricature heroes with Reaper. I think Widowmaker is the other great example of this, that she's so good at long range that she has to have a weakness at close range. And equally, I think the hero has to not be able to have insane mobility and be this unbelievable juggernaut at long distances. And I think people underestimate grappling hook as a movement ability is insane. It's a really good movement ability. Like, you can just pull yourself wherever you want to be in 360 degrees direction. You can pull yourself further on the ground to move horizontally further away. You can go vertically very high into the air for, like, you know, jump shots, or just get to vertical ground. The weakness of it is that your grappling hook cooldown is 12 seconds normally, whereas most of the roster's heroes for mobilities are less than 12 seconds. So you get your grappling hook like burnt off, and then you get chased down on the second dive, right? If you hit 3 scope shots now as Widowmaker, not headshots, just scope shots, your grappling hook is on cooldown again. Or off cooldown, sorry. You can use it. So I've got a serious worry here that Widowmaker can get forced out with a grapple hook on a dive, goes onto like a further back high ground or something. Then all she needs to do is like tap shoot on the scope shot a tank 3 times, and or even 2 times, and before the next dive can possibly initiate, she has grapple hook again and can just grapple back to the other high ground again. And basically makes this uncatchable, tantalizing carrot on a stick hero that can fucking one-shot a character from across the map. I think it's a really spooky ability. If I'm looking at it in a positive light, it also lets you play more aggressive with Widowmaker rather than at the complete back of the map. You could play a bit further forwards, use your grappling hook to go back to your team, and then before like the team can get back onto you again, you do this thing, as I said, to hit 2 scope shots, and then grapple further back again. So it lets you play a bit more aggressive. So there is some design philosophy, but I actually am super spooked by this. I can see a world where this is, on certain maps, basically makes the Widow unkillable. And I'm a little bit concerned by that, especially if you're a tank. I think it would make your life miserable. It'd almost be at the point where I think the dive heroes would be like, listen, the Sombra and Genji are going to deal with this. Just don't come here. We don't give them free shots. Just don't peek her at all. Just don't look at her. Just stay away. Stay in the spawn room. Don't come out tank. Don't come out the spawn room tank. So yeah, I'm a bit spooked by that, but maybe I'm a bit too over conservative with my worries. Anyway, I've given it 3 stars design and 4 stars quality because I do think it lets it play a bit more aggressive. So there are reasons to take this over other reasons where you maybe won't take this instead because you might just not need it. Her other one is Deadly Duh, as in the number 2. Venom Mine gains 50% increased damage and a second charge, enabling 2 active mines at the same time. By the way, the mines, I think, with the buff do 112.5 damage, which is a serious amount of damage if, like, a Tracer is coming up at you and she takes 112.5 damage over how many seconds it is for Venom Mine. You're going to have to get a pack, basically, and also, you revealed it's pretty spookerific to get hit by one of these. And actually just change your stealth slightly, because you could use both mines for intel, right? Someone's coming from this way, someone's coming from that way. Or you could put both on the same corner, and the Tracer would be taking 200 and something damage if she doesn't find a health pack, which is really the big fuck off, get away from me type ability. So, it's a bit boring, but it does have some uses, and it has different ways of playing with the kit. So I've actually given this 3 stars design, 2 stars quality. I think you'd always prefer the escape plan just to let you get away from people more reliably. It just makes you better into dive, and dive is Widow's big weakness. Against like poke and rush, Widow can just do whatever the fuck she wants. Finally, oh, and by the way, I gave a D. Maybe not a huge, maybe actually a bit of a surprise, because I did give 3 stars in design to both of her mage kits, and I normally give them a bit more healing, but I think her miners were so bad, I think I put it down into a D. I think the other thing that made me like a little bit annoyed by this was, oh yeah, I remember the other reason now, I should have noted this down. I knocked a mark off on the mark score because I don't think you would ever take anything but focused aim and escape plan. I think they were just so far and away the better options that the other perks are kind of worthless, which means you're not really making any decision making and therefore it's not a great package. So, D. Now we finally get to the supports. And finally I get away. You may have noticed me just turning my pages. I've got through my 9 pages, because at the supports, I was like, holy shit, if I keep writing, like, 4 or more pages, I won't make this video in time. So I had to stop and cut some corners, so apologies. Everything else is coming from the old noggin. Not that I was reading from the notes anyway, but I was occasionally skimming over. It's like, did I say this? Yes. Anyway, I don't have that anymore. We get to Anna. Anna's been somewhat divisive on, I think, the whole reception of this hero. Most people are thrilled because Anna is an extremely popular character to play. She's got a very fun playstyle, and everything here is going to make her more fun. There is a bit of design questioning behind some of this. Is like, does this really mean anything decision-making wise? Is this really like a good design philosophy? Is this OP is the other question. And I think OP things are fine. Numbers can always be tuned. It's really, is this fun? So I'm going to go from the design point of, is all of this like fun? Is this a reason to take this fun thing? That type of deal. And we'll worry about the quality later. Anyway, the groggy perk. Enemies waking up from sleep dart are slowed for 2 seconds. I think this is semi-pointless as a perk. Most heroes that you sleep, you kill. At least from the squishy side of things. On tanks, it's going to be pretty obnoxious, and I think this is a situation where you would maybe consider taking this. If you're going up against Wrecking Ball, for example, sleeping Wrecking Ball and then having 2 seconds of slow where it can't take Fireball, you're basically going to kill the Wrecking Ball, right? So it's just a really hard punish a dive tank. If you get to sleep on them, you're probably going to pick up the kill on them, where otherwise you wouldn't be able to get the kill. So it really puts like the fear of death into them. It basically means that D.Va is going to be played into you, so. I think design-wise, I gave this 1 star. I was pretty annoyed with this. It's kind of just a buff to Sleep Dart. It's kind of like any situation where you would have used Sleep Dart, you'll still use Sleep Dart now, so. And I think quality-wise, it's 3 stars. I think there's better stuff that the Anna can do, but it's still really obnoxious into very certain heroes. The other one is Biotic Bounce. After exploding, the Biotic Grenade bounces and explodes again for 50 damage and healing. Bearing in mind it normally does 75, I think, now. I think that's where we're at with the Anna Nade. I think this one is actually super scary. Like, this is a lot of damage on the nade. And there'll be spots where you can hit people on the transition, like, they're moving through a choke. And you'll hit the nade, and it'll bounce and hit them again. And it'll do in total 125 damage and a big anti as well, where they can't heal. So that is super scary. Like, it's a big amount of damage that people can then follow on. And it's going to mean that they're more likely to die if you get antied. So I think it's a huge buff to the Biotic Grenade. And the Biotic Grenade is a really strong ability. There's probably some like intermediate plays as well, because you remember you can actually do this for healing as well. Like you could super heal a person with your biotic bounce. So there is a bit of decision making on this, but it's basically like just turbo buffing the biotic nade. They might as well just giving it more stats, right? That's kind of how I see it. Maybe there is a world as well where you can throw the grenade at your feet. You get the healing and the other one bounces off to do the biotic anti-nade effect. I think that was the intention sort of this, is that she can heal herself and anti someone. But I feel like you're going to use it in either of the other situations, like the more character-esque situations where you get more damage or you get more healing. And actually, I assume if you do it for healing, the first bounce will pop. It will pro-heal the person, right? And they'll get more healing on the second one. So it's actually a really big burst of healing. I actually wish I'd calculated that, but I haven't calculated, so it's... is it 50% more healing? I think it's like 150 healing she'll get then, or whoever gets hit by it, 150 healing. It is an AoE as well, so if you hit that in an AoE, that's a pretty big heal, right? So, yeah, I think it's a pretty spooky ability. So, I give it 2 stars in design because there's a bit of decision making in it, but I think this is super high quality. Again, 4 stars, maybe pushing 5 stars. It's really a major though, where I think things like, they get real. Headhunter, biotic rifle can crit enemies. This is so strong. It suddenly makes Anna like a damaging threat, and she's pretty good damaging right now, but yeah, she turns into this unbelievable sniper. Worth noting as well, it's only enemies, not allies. You can't crit heal an ally. But if you're playing Anna in a more pokey comp, Anna basically becomes like a second sniper. She basically becomes like an Ashe-like character, where she's got this nade that can do some damage, but also cause them to not be able to take any healing. And also she can, like, headshot, body shot, I think it is, for lethal. On top of that, it's super... Actually, it would be with the nade, headshot, body shot, I think is lethal. It's super scary. Like, it's a lot of damage potential that you can push out on Anna. And I kind of mentioned a few times that I sort of miss the open queue days to some degree. I at least miss the idea of playing 2 supports and 1 tank, 3 DPS, or 2 tanks, 2 DPS, or 3 tanks, 1 DPS. I think all of those comps were quite fun to play in and against. I think they're using this perk system a little to, like, kind of tease into that a little bit. And it's kind of turning these supports, rather into a support, into a more DPS-like character, like a serious carry on the support role, where maybe your Anna doesn't heal quite as much, but they can put out a lot of damage. Anyway, if you're playing it up in poke versus poke, you might want to just grab the Headhunter, right? It just gives your team way more damage. It's super scary. Because of all of this, and I'm going to ignore the quality side of things, like it could be OP. I'm not going to take it off the design score. I have given it design 3 and quality 5. I think it's a really strong ability. I think it's super strong. I can't, like, overestimate this enough. It basically turns Anna into a DPS character, which is good, because the other team doesn't have 3 DPS characters. At the same time, retaining the ability of Anna, who's already a pretty strong support as is. So yeah, if you're playing against a comp that isn't going to dive you or rush you down, you take Headhunter, right? So there is some design philosophy, some design decision making in this. So I think it's fine. It meets the bill of all of this. And they can always tune the numbers down later. It might end up proving to be that it's too strong at the normal crit multiplier. Maybe the crit multiplier gets dropped to 1.5. So I don't think we all shit the bed right now. I think it's fine. Let's just let it be OP for some time, if it's going to be OP. The other one is Shrike, or Shriek, I don't know how to pronounce this. Using Anna Boost, also cast it on Anna. Again, design-wise, I'm actually quite happy with the philosophy of this, because it suddenly means that Anna is not quite as fragile on the dive anymore if she uses... if she builds up a nano, because she can just nano herself and survive. On the flip side as well, it's just Anna turning into a DPS. Like, nano boosting Anna is really scary. Like, double nano at the same time. It's not, again, an insignificant amount of damage that is coming through from your support player, so it suddenly turns you into, like, a 1-3-1 type comp for a brief period of time, and if you like leverage that to, you know, pick up some kills, albeit you don't need the support at that point, right? And then I can still come back to being a support. Either way, it just makes it this unkillable, massive damage dealing juggernaut, so it's pretty spooky. I think it's a really strong ability again. Because of this, I've given it 4-star design, 5-star quality. I think both these abilities, these perks, are takeable, and they'll be takeable in certain circumstances. I think if you go up against a Winston comp, or a Diva comp, or any dive comp really for that matter, you take the Shriek Shrike combo, because you can always nano yourself and fight back basically, or survive a dive on your own. If you're playing with like Sigmas and that type of thing, or if you're playing against Rush maybe even, and you're on the high ground, just take Headhunter and become a DPS. I think that's completely reasonable. So I like the design of the kit, it's just, it might be overtuned, but I don't want to worry about the overtuned part of it. Either way, I've given it a C, but it's like a high C. It's really the groggy one. I don't really like it. I think it's just like a glorified buff Sleep Dart. It's kind of like giving Sleep Dart a longer time, which we already nerfed off Anna because it was too oppressive to play against, so I don't really like the idea of giving it back. Baptiste, he has got the minor perk of Field Medicine. Immortality Field restores 80 health to nearby allies and 40 health to Baptiste when destroyed. I think this is hateful. I'm just going to say it. I think this is a design space you shouldn't really explore. The whole point of the Mortality Field is the weakness is you can kill it, like the Immortality Field. It gets destroyed. And when you destroy it, then people are mortal again. I don't think that you should be rewarded for having your own field destroyed by your opponent. It sort of makes the onus on your opponent to actually, like, kill this thing and get the healing from it. It just makes it a bit too good. I think it's a really bad idea of an ability, to be honest with you. It kind of means like a team playing into the Immortality Field just doesn't have a winning play, right? What's your outplay? I guess your outplay is you push them out the field and don't destroy it, which is... It's a little bit shitty, honestly, because there's still situations where you can put the Immortality Field where you can't be pushed out the field anymore. Like if you're in a small room and you're like hiding the field above the doorway, you can't really ever be pushed out of that. You're just endlessly immortal. And if they destroy the field, then LOL, I get 80 more healing or 40 from the BAP. I think this is a really poor design choice, so I gave it 1 star. Quality-wise, I think roughly around 3. It probably doesn't move the needle that much. I think the idea of it is that, you know, when BAP's Immortality Field breaks, inevitably the people that were in the field die because they were at, like, you know, 20% health. Good, they should do. Like, it's an insane ability that can basically counter an ultimate, but it has a downside that if it gets destroyed, you are liable to dying if you're not topped back up. I don't think the field itself should top you back up again. I think that's nonsense. His other one is automated healing. After placing Amplification Matrix, which is the ultimate, your shoulder turret periodically fires up to 12 shots at allies, each restoring 25 health. I kind of like this because of, again, like, nod back factor. This is the thing, by the way. If you ever notice on Baptiste, he's got like a little laser thing on his shoulder, and it does nothing. It's not in any part of his kit. Like, it's something that was, like, originally, like, in his lore notes and stuff, but clearly didn't make it into the game as an actual ability. So he's always had this laser on his shoulder. I think it's even in, like, his intro cinematic things in the game, and it doesn't do anything. Now it does something, and it's this thing. You place your ultimate down, and it will shoot healing bolts at your allies for you. It's really cool. I'd like to see some numbers on it as well for just range and that type of thing. But it lets you put down your amplification matrix and lets you shoot with your primary fire into it more than your secondary fire, aka you can be more offensive than defensive. Also worth noting, if you're healing through your own window, you're getting 50 health off these shots, so they're pretty nice little shots of healing. If they don't go through the window, like, you know, you might be standing at the window with other people, you're only getting half the amount, but again, it just keeps everyone a bit more survivable around the window, lets you use the window for damage. It gives a bit more carry potential to the Baptiste. I'm actually fine with this. I think it's a reasonable change. 2 stars in design, 3 stars in quality. Again, the design points I knocked a bit off for. Is there a reason why, like, you would use this in a certain situation? I just think it's just flat out good. It's just a flat out buff to the ult. There are some minor things that maybe, like, you want to take this for a bit more shield busting potential, but it's really minor. Then his majors are Assault Burst. Regenerative Burst grants Baptiste 20% attack speed for 4 seconds, but no longer instantly heals. Really cool, really cool. A bit like the Soldier one again, it turns Baptiste away from being like this big instant healer into someone that enables a bit more damage. He has a bit more... It kind of turns him again into like a little bit of a DPS, but it does this at the cost of losing some healing. It's not just free more damage. And in terms of the no longer instant heals as well, I need to kind of see the numbers on this, because Bap's regen burst it's 40 instant health on him if he's above 50% health. It's 8 if he's below 50, and then it's 40 over time. I don't know if you still get the instant heal, but it's just wrapped into the package of over 4 seconds time of healing, or if you're only getting the 40. If you're only getting the 40, it means that Bat's survivability is incredibly, incredibly low. And actually, it probably explains why field medicine might be a thing, because he would have so little self-healing that he needs the healing from the field as well to top him back up again, because he'll be using the field to keep himself alive. So I think maybe the story actually has to unfold as the 2 perks, which maybe explains why field medicine is a thing, but I still don't really like it. Overall, I gave it 4 stars design, 4 stars quality. I like the idea of changing your hero into something slightly different by taking a perk. Maybe you don't need a lot of self-healing in certain circumstances if, like, you know, you're playing against the comms trying to brawl through the front line and then go into the back line afterwards. Perhaps you just want some more damage to give them the old fuck off instead of the healing. Maybe. Also, you have Rocket Boots. While airborne from Exo Boots, use space to dash horizontally. I like it. It gives Bap another way to escape. He's a very diveable support, probably one of the most diveable supports, not including Zen. You get a little bit of horizontal mobility with your vertical mobility, sir. I think that's fine. Against certain comps, obviously this is really good. And it gives Bap a little bit of, not insane survivability, by the way, but just a little bit more survivability. Again, we'll have to see the numbers of how far you dash, but I suspect it's not a million miles away, right? Anyway, 4 stars design, 3 stars quality as well. Also, just gonna need to pause a second. I need to refill my water. We're in the last stretch, don't worry. We're in the last stretch. But I'm losing my voice. Okay, we might have to fly through the support. I'm beginning to lose all of my body right now. Again, I'm an old man. I'm losing RAM. I'm also losing other hardware parts right now. I can't remember if I did the mark for Baptiste. I don't think I did, actually. I'm giving him a B overall. His major perks make up, or more than make up for his minor ones being a little bit weak in my standing. I actually quite like the other 2, though, from the majors. Then we get to Brigitte. She has Barrier Restoration. Shield Bash restores 100 health to Barrier Shield when it hits an enemy. Yeah, cool, sure. It does change slightly how you use it. Often Brigittas use Shield Bash to as a mobility tool to get away from someone, that type of deal. Occasionally they'll use it for the damage, but it's more for like getting away from someone. Perhaps into a more pokey style comp, which is like what Brig's nightmare is poke. She might Shield Bash someone to get the 100 health to have some more barrier. That probably puts her into the more trouble though, so she'll probably then use that extra health to lose. Sorry, it will get lost upon her trying to get away from the person's Shield Bash. So I think the ability is kind of garbage, but it has some thought process in it at the very least. I've given it 2 stars design, 2 stars quality. I think it's pretty weak. Compared to especially morale boost, Inspire lasts 3 seconds longer when activated by Whip Shot. So you have to use a Whip Shot, not just a normal primary fire, but Inspire lasts 3 seconds longer. The literal entire gameplay loop for Brig, if you want to be a good Brig player, is always have Inspire up. It's literally like the be-all and end-all of the hero. I guess also stand near your teammates, if I have to be more clear about it, so the Inspire does something, but as long as you always have Inspire up, Brig is almost always a pretty decent support. A bit like just Lucio having like the aura healing on. It's not going to be like that terrible ever, right? But especially in Brigitte's case, the Inspire is like pretty decent healing over time. So Whip Shot giving it 3 additional seconds longer before you need to like proc it up again. That's really solid. That's a really good thing to have. So I think this is by design pretty weak because you normally use Whip Shot to proc Inspire anyway, so it doesn't change anything. But it's just a buff to the hero, so it's a pretty good quality thing for Brig. In fact, I think it's a pretty big quality change for a minor perk. Then on Majors, she has Quick Fix. Repair Packs instantly heal an additional 35 health to critical health allies. Again, I think that's people below half health. Repair Packs normally heal for 25 health instantly and then 100 over 2 seconds. This means with the Quick Fix, they'll do 60 plus 100. So it's like 160 healing, but the 60 is front loaded. Actually, this is low-key pretty good. I think people have like underestimated this. 60 quick health, you know, that's like the Mercy Beam going on for 1 second. It's like an instant heal, right? So that's pretty good. And if they're getting constantly chunked and chunked again, you get this repetitive quick fix buffer every time you put that pack on them. So I actually quite like it. I think it's a good tool for like keeping someone up. Now, does it change the way you're using repair packs? Oh god, no. No, it doesn't. It doesn't change anything. It's not like you're gonna wait for your allies to go to below critical health before you suddenly start throwing packs on them. The packs regenerate pretty quickly anyway. You're probably throwing them fairly willy-nilly regardless, so as much as I think it's a good buff to them, it is, but it doesn't really change like the design philosophy too much. And a lot of the times I think you're going to throw the packs out before critical health anyway. Because there's a minor thing where maybe you do wait for them to get to critical before you throw it. I did give it 2 stars design and 3 on the quality. It's pretty minor again. I don't think this really changes too much for Brig, but when it comes off and you save someone, then obviously you're happy at that moment. It's just how often does that happen? Finally, she got Whiplash. Whip shots knock back and slam enemies into walls, dealing 50 extra damage. This is the fun Brig playstyle. Like, it turns Brig into mini Doomfist, but also can, you know, heal everyone on the team and has a shield, unlike Doomfist. And has a good ultimate, unlike Doomfist. Anyway, I think people are overestimating this one a little bit, because there's probably not that many situations where Brig is whip-shotting someone away and they're going to hit a wall afterwards. I feel like for the most part, you're whip-shotting someone away that is diving onto you, like a tank, for example. That seems like a pretty safe bet. Sometimes you might hit a Tracer, and maybe this is just the use case. It's pretty good versus Tracer. Tracer might be near a wall, like buzzing around you. You hit that whip shot, it does pretty big damage to Tracer anyway, and she takes the 50, she bounces back into a wall, so... yeah. I think it's okay, but again, I think it's a pretty minor change for a major perk as well. So I'm giving it 3 stars in design, because there is a little bit, like, theory behind it. Like, it's also map dependent if you take that perk or not. But I think the quality is actually extremely weak. I've seen some people rating it over Quick Fix. I think you'd almost always take Quick Fix over Whip Splash. It's just a more consistent bet. Overall, though, I've given her a D. I think her package is actually pretty weak, to be honest with you. Then we get to Alari. Alaria's rapid construction. Healing pylon builds 300% faster, and its cooldown is reduced by 1.5 seconds. Fine. It doesn't really change what you're going to do with Alari. I'm not going to lie. I actually had to look into Alari's pylon. I've never been fully aware of exactly how a cooldown works. I know that if it's taking damage, it takes longer to come back onto... it comes off cooldown, sorry. If you break it before it's not taking any damage, it comes back faster. And I believe if you break it or something and it's under no attack, it's even faster still, or something like that. I don't remember. There's like so many different timings for the pylon, I just don't fully understand it. Either way, it knocks 1.5 seconds off it. If you take the longest time, which is like 14 seconds, it's pretty small drop in the ocean, right? And the building faster thing seems extremely weak, so it just seems super weak. I give it 1-star design and 2-star quality. I think it's actually so fucking weak, this ability, that the design actually sort of like gets hindered by it as well. It's like, why would you take this? The only reason you take it is if the other thing is bad, like worse than this. It's not situationally good, it's just, there. The other one is Summer Solstice. Alari's flight time during Captive Sun is increased by 3 seconds, and her flight speed is increased by 20%. Sure. It means in her ultimate, in case you're wondering what this is, she can fly around a little bit more. She could fly further. It means she could go aggressively into an opposing team, especially if they had no way to shoot it out the sky. She can just hover in the air and blast people from the skies, and then get back to her team back in time for tea. So there is some reason to take this. It's probably suitably a minor perk. It's fairly minor in the situations where it's useful in, but okay. I give it design 2, quality 2, because it's very, very niche situations where you'd probably want this. For the most part, you don't want to fly into the enemy team. And for the most part, I don't think you really want to be flying around in the sky, because really good players will just pick you out of the sky. Anyway, I guess the flight speed is actually quite important. It probably makes it harder to hit you out of the sky. So maybe I'm actually underestimating the quality in this one a bit. Maybe the quality should be like towards 3 stars instead. Her major ones is solar power. I'm actually quite intrigued by this one. Fully charged solar rifle hits grant 12.5% of your maximum solar energy, overfilling up to 50%. So I believe this is... if you hit a fully charged left click, your right click will have more pool of healing to heal from. I think this rewards Alari from, rather than playing her normal playstyle, which is like, I just take an off angle and use my turret to heal me up as I shoot on the I crossfire someone with my teammates. She actually could play with a team and sort of like brawl a little bit almost. Like, she can just use her shots against people that are not close by, but like in front of her. This is giving her solar energy back, which means that she can use a right click more. And a right click is a bit of a closer range heal than anything else. I've always thought Alari's kit's really weird. Like, it's like this playstyle where one side of things is like extremely, I'm going to take a flank and snipe people, which is like the preferred way of playing her. And then her right click healing is like this quite tight beam, which hasn't got a great range to it. So it's like one side of the coin she wants to play at long range, and the other side of the coin she wants to play at close range. And it's just gelling those bits together, and map geometries where she can do both those things suitably. I think the solar power lets her potentially play a little bit closer, but she would need a lot of babysitting in that comp. So I think it's a bit of a niche idea and a bit cute, let's put it that way. Regardless of that, I gave it 5 stars design because it is promoting something as a form of playstyle for Alari that I don't think you would normally try and play. It's kind of an interesting concept. I don't necessarily think it's going to work. I actually gave it 3 stars, but I think actually with a bit more hindsight and a bit more, you know, cognitive abilities returning to my body after illness, I think it's probably like a 2-star thing. I don't think it would actually work, but it's interesting at the very least. Then the other one is Sunburn. Outburst ignites enemies, dealing an additional 70 damage over 3 seconds. Sure, this is like the ability where you know, I don't even know what to call it, like you just push everything away and you like hop into the air. If anyone dares to get near you when you're doing that, you do 70 damage over 3 seconds as burn damage. That's pretty spooky, right? It's got some niche interactions with like Mauga, for example, because it's another way to ignite a hero. I don't think it's a good enough reason, by the way, to run Alari with Mauga. In fact, I think it'd be pretty troll to do so. But it does give a bit of a fuck off to any people diving onto you. If a Tracer's like trying to get onto your ass, right, and you hit the shot and you hit this the outburst, you might die in the process, but the Tracer might die to the plip damage eventually over time. So it's a possibility, a way that if you get traded on a dive, and it's one of your weaknesses, your big weaknesses, in fact, is getting dove, you might be able to trade 1 for 1 at the very least for that dive, which is not the end of the world, but at the same time, it's not also a great part of the world. So I think it's okay. So 3 stars design, 3 stars quality. Again, it doesn't really change the way you play Alari either. It's not like I think you'd bait your ass now because you can do 70 more damage burn over time. That's not worth it. It's just a bit of a... It's just a small way to deter people from doing it. Overall, though, I've given her a B, mainly because of the solar power thing, which I don't actually think will work from a quality standpoint, but I just want to try and see using this brawlier version of Alari and see if that works. Then we get to Juno. She has the minor perk Familiar Vitals. Pulsar torpedoes lock onto allies 35% faster. It's basically just a buff to the torpedoes without changing how they're used. It's actually not quite true. You do change it slightly, because you might be more inclined to just use it as healing. You take the 35% faster charge time and just ignore the enemies. It means in a situation where you need to reload quickly and someone's in like critical health, you can actually get the torpedoes out possibly in time to heal them. So it has got some decision making. It's got some pretty good potential in that regard. So I did give it a star above just 1 star. It is somewhat of a just buff to the normal ability, but I think there is enough niche use cases in it that it deserves a bit more than that. And I think it's an okay quality ability as well. She's also got Hyper Boost, which is while she's glide boosting, she passes through the Hyper Ring, it pushes her forwards. It gives her more mobility in Hyper Ring, which already gives her a lot of mobility. Basically, this gives her both an offensive and defensive tool. She could use it offensive to get even further into the opposing team and int, or she can use it defensively and get further away from the opposing team diving you and survive. Guess which one most people are going to use this for? Either way, it is a design choice, so 3 stars on design, 3 stars on quality. I think it's an interesting enough ability, and it's a minor perk, and I think it's a pretty minor effect. The Major, she has Master Blaster. Nice. Medi Blaster can crit enemies. Okay, we have the Ana treatment here. This Medi Blaster is going to do disgusting damage. It's basically going to be, I don't know what to call it, like a mini Sombra type thing, like an SMG that does a lot of damage. Obviously, there's range issues. Junior doesn't really want to play super up close, but if someone is like, you know, trying to Ass Blast her, she can Master Blast them back. It gives her some real 1v1 potential versus heroes like Tracer and Genji, so I think it's a really big buff to Juno. And I think it's more often than not what you're just going to take. Why increase your, survivability by getting another double jump for the, the other ability when you can just kill your enemy? That's the best form of defense, right? You just take offense. So I've given this 3 stars again because there's probably are reasons to take it and to not take it. Obviously, you can't crit shielded heroes, so it's not a great thing to take into a shielded hero comp, but it's still probably, with like the combination of Hyper Boost, you'd probably be able to flank and do some damage that way. Really, all this is going to promote is hyper flanking Juno, where they use the Hyper Boost to get in and out of your team and just try and kill a backliner. If that's your cup of tea, then here's your ability. Anyway, I've given this 3 stars design and 5 stars quality. She already can output a disgusting amount of healing. Now she can output a disgusting amount of damage as well. She can do the full shebang. Her final major is Reboots. Activating Glide Boost resets Double Jump. It gives her a bit more vertical mobility. It's nice in a situation that she's getting dove upon and she's a bit weak to the dive. Not super weak, but she can get like super forced out. And then by that point, she can't really do anything to her team anymore. Because she doesn't really have self-sustaining heal. She just has the ability to run the fuck away. With double jump times double jump, maybe you can get into the skybox far enough that the people that are diving you can't effectively do enough damage to you, so you can heal your team whilst, escaping effectively. I think you most times just take Master Blaster, though. It's probably the more fun and probably the more damaging and more defensive ability by virtue of the fact that you're just going to kill people instead. So I gave Reboot's 3-star design. It's an interesting design choice, but I think quality-wise, it's going to be pretty weak. Overall, Juno, I gave a C. Solid C, all of the abilities pretty reasonable on the perks. I think some are better than others, though, so... It's probably more of a C- than a C+. Kuriko. She has Urgent Care, Healing of Fuda, which is just her primary healing. The paper, basically. The projectile speed is increased by 50% when seeking critical health allies. I think, low-key, this could be kind of insane. It makes weaving a bit easier, I think. Actually, my brain is kind of melting on this one. Because surely a rate of fire is the same. It's just that they get there faster, which means it's still like bump, healing, bump, healing, bump, healing. It just moves the bump to the left slightly, right? Which is more likely that you're able to react to someone dying and save them. So it is a buff. There are situations probably where you would take it over not taking it. There's probably situations where an ally wouldn't go into critical health because they're going to get one-shot by Widowmaker, in which case, why would you take this? So there is some sort of design choicing in here. Generally speaking, though, I think it's pretty much just free value, so I don't love it. So I'll give it 1-star design, 3 stars quality. Fortune Teller is, if you hit a kunai, not a crit either, just hit it, you launch 2 Healing of Fuda to an ally in front of you. Again, it's kind of just cheap value. It promotes you being a bit more aggressive, right? Play DPS Kuriko, you get free healing anyway. Don't bother about weaving shots into your healing. I'll weave for you. So I am not a huge fan of this perk. I have given it 2 stars, though, just because there is a little bit of a thought process in it and a sort of like changing of the play style where you might even not want to be a flanking Kuriko in this case doing the damage. You just want to be behind someone else, shooting shots at range and healing the person in front of you. So there is a bit of a thought process, but again, I think it's a pretty cheap damage. Cheap healing. So I've given it 3 stars quality. I think it's okay. The major ones are Shuffling. Swift Step can be used again within 4 seconds of initial cast. Bearing in mind, Swift Step is 7 seconds normally, and this hero is already pretty hard to pin down. She's going to be so fucking hard to pin down with this perk. Like, you have to bear in mind that how many heroes have mobility cooldowns they can use within 4 seconds, right? Because assuming your heroes use that mobility cooldown to get onto the off angle that Kuriko is inevitably playing on, to force her the fuck out, she then teleports to someone else. Then you need someone else to chase down that person within 4 seconds, because otherwise she'll teleport to someone else. Then they need to, shuttle run to that person. It's going to be really hard without, like, very coordinated dives, like, to know that the only person this Kuriko can TP to is this person, so we need to send someone already, at this point, to that person to kill the Kuriko before she gets the Swift Step again. I think it's a bit of a shit change, just because I think it's a buff to an ability that's already really strong. And do you really have any reason to not use it and to, use it in other situations? Not particularly. It obviously is worse if your team's playing very, very tight together, but if they're not, if they're playing vaguely, like, other angles rather than just all up main, it's going to be really strong, and it's going to be really, really obnoxious and make Kuriko, like, basically an unkillable machine. So I've actually given this 3 stars design, 5 stars quality. I think in the right hands at the highest level, this is just going to be disgusting for Kuriko. She might actually just be unkillable for, like, certain comps. And design choice, again, it does make you have to decide of what team you're playing to take this or not. If you're playing super bunch up, don't take it. But as long as you can get your team roughly on the same page, you can play this pretty aggressive Kuriko style where you're the flanker now. And if someone tries to force you off the angle, back into the team, and then you can TP to the other person on the other angle 4 seconds later and just repeat and rinse and repeat. Foxtrot, Protected Suzu grants 40% movement speed to allies for 2 seconds. I actually like this one. I think it's a good design choice. Suzu gets another potential use that isn't just defensive. This one is potentially offensive as well. It could still be defensive, though. You could Suzu someone that's about to die and they get the 40% movement speed buff, so they can just run the fuck away and don't get killed as soon as the Suzu runs out. Alternatively, you could throw the Suzu on someone else that you want to, like, force them into their comp, like a Genji blading, and they suddenly get 40% movement speed, and you can't escape them for 2 seconds. So I think it's nice to give this a bit of offensive or defensive variety. I think this also nods back a little bit to the original form of Suzu, which had knockback on it. They removed it eventually because it had so many things going on at Suzu. Do I think giving it movement speed is a good idea? I think it's fine on the major quirk. I think as a base ability, it wouldn't be fine. So I think it's actually a perfect use case scenario for a perk. So I've given this 4 stars design, 4 stars quality. I actually think it's a pretty solid ability if you use it in the right circumstances. Overall, I give Kiri a B. Wife Lever. Yeah. Ah, buddy, this hero has probably had the worst launch of any hero ever in the history of the game. It just in from a standpoint of viability. This hero has never been viable. I think they're the only hero in the history of the game that has never been viable. Even Junkrat saw play in certain circumstances. So, yeah, this hero's having a rough time. Even Hog saw some play competitively in the history of Overwatch. Maybe not in Overwatch 2, though, I'll concede that. Alright, so let's see what the perks are that are going to take Lifeweaver out of the gutter. He has Cleansing Grasp. Life Grip cleanses negative effects. Sure, it's fine. It gives Life Grip a bit more use. Not only can you grip people out of trouble, but if they're asleep as well as being in trouble, they wake back up again and they can start playing the game again. So it creates situations where you don't just life grip someone and pull them into your team and then just die in your team. It can get annoying things off them. So I'm okay with this. It's a pretty minor thing because you're already pulling them out of danger, ideally, anyway. So it was kind of already cleansing a negative effect in the form of just getting them out of trouble, but I don't think it's a big thing to cry about. So 3 stars quality, 3 stars design. It doesn't add too much to it, but it doesn't take too much away from it. Then we have Life Cycle. While alive, regenerate 10 health per second. Upon death, drop a healing seed that heals allies for 250 health. Okay, we've seen this ability before. This was on base Lifeweaver for about 2 weeks. Maybe not even that. So, when Lifeweaver dies, they drop a plant. It heals 250 health when you pick it up. It's none of this business now that your opponent can pick it up for less health. It's just an ally that can pick it up. Listen, Overwatch, I already have enough people on my team telling me to KYS without the fucking F1 button telling me to do that as well. I don't think it's a good idea to reward your heroes getting killed. Generally speaking, there are some exceptions. Junkrat I can forgive it on to some degree, because it's not really a reward that he perishes. It's sort of just like he's an insane guy who likes, explosives, and he tries to take someone out with him. That I'm okay with. But I just don't like the idea that there's a big part of Lifeweaver's kit. It's like, I need this big burst of heal. Lifeweaver, go KYS. I don't think it's a wholesome ability, to be honest with you. He does get 10 health regeneration per second, which is a bit boring, but sure, it makes him more survivable, I guess. Is this something you would situationally take or not? Yeah, I guess. If you're in a situation where your teammates can't get to you, then why would you take this? And actually, I guess that's the other issue about this. Lifeweaver kind of wants to just stay on the other side of the map. I think the best way to play Lifeweaver, and maybe I'm wrong because no one plays Lifeweaver, so I guess there's no good way to play Lifeweaver, but I always like playing Lifeweaver as far away from my other support as possible, because I can always grip someone. I can always have that long range healing, and you just try and bait someone to dive onto you, and then you dash off whatever high ground you're on, dash onto another petal platform and take another high ground approach so that the opposing, the opposing Pokemon need to set up another dive to get to you onto the platform, and by that point, you dive off again to another high ground or another platform, and you just keep baiting someone away, because you have, no value in fights, but they actually have value, so as long as you can bait them away from the fight, and you're still doing some range healing, it's fine. But if you're doing this playstyle where you're trying to play fairly far away, not near the front line, how's anyone going to pick up this healing flower thing? It seems really stupid, so I think it's still stupid. I don't think it should be added to the game, but it's a minor perk, so I sort of don't care. 1 design, 2 quality. And actually, that was generous in the quality. I think it's actually 1 quality as well. Then his major perk is Life Weaving. Rejuvenating dash adds 20 healing to your next healing blossom within 3 seconds. Sure, you get a super heal. It's not even a super heal, really. It just means that you can heal faster after you dash. Do you really want to be wasting one of your, few survivable cooldowns, especially horizontal, it's your only one, on getting 20 more health quickly? Probably not, so I think it's a really minor, major change, so I'm not hugely behind it. That being said, it does make you have to think about what order you want to use your cooldowns in. Do I want to trade away my survivability to try and keep someone else up? So conventionally, I like the idea of it, so I've given it 3 design. I think it's really garbage though, so 2 stars quality. And then finally we get Super Bloom. Thorns detonate for 30 extra damage when enough stick within 1.5 seconds. I'll tell you what, this hero is slowly moving into a fucking offensive juggernaut. These thorns already do quite a lot of damage, honestly. They can really give the people the fuck off, honestly, if you try and get near him. Them super combining it's a fucking needle from Halo. Actually pretty scary. You might be able to kill people with this, so maybe the slowly moving Lifeweaver away from this Mercy-esque, incredible, consistent single-target healer that sort of struggles to keep themselves alive to like this offensive juggernaut. Does this really fit in with his lore? Probably not, but whatever. I'm kind of for it. From a design point of view, there are some reasons to take this and not reasons to take this. It probably wouldn't be as good into like shielded comps, for example, because you wouldn't be able to get the super combining that easily. But it's sort of just a base buff to his Thorn, so I think it's kind of a bit of a boring perk again. It doesn't really make you have any decisions of like, I mean, you don't decide whether or not to use it, you're just always using it, right? It's just a passive that's added to the kit. But I think, generally speaking, you would probably take Super Bloom over Life Weaving almost every single time, right? Just for a more offensive threat. So we've given it 3 stars to the quality. Do I think this suddenly means that Life Weave will see play? Oh, absolutely not. And overall, I think I give his kit D. I think it's really weak. Considering it's a hero, it's actually pretty weak. And actually, if you go through all my other ratings, most of the other heroes I think are pretty weak. I've actually had a quite good perk kit because they have a lot of more stuff to work with, right? They can do some batshit crazy things. Because the kit is kind of bad, so they'll take whatever they can get, right? Lifeweaver's kit is pretty bad. Or at least it's very situational, so I kind of was hoping the perk kit could, like, give him a completely different ability or something that maybe shifts things up a little bit. But this is kind of, like, all just fairly weak, to be honest with you, so I'm not super impressed by Lifeweaver. So yeah, D. Lucio! Minor perk. Base Blowout. Soundwave's knockback is increased by 15%. I feel like this is patched in and out of the game, and when it's at very high knockback, the Lucio players all rejoice because it suddenly gives them kill pressure even against tanks, so I expect a lot of boop of the days. This is the Funny Astro buff. I think it's solid. Situationally, it's going to be good. Situationally, it's going to be bad. Ignoring just booping people off the map, booping dives away is going to be really obnoxious if you force them off the high ground that you're currently on. So I actually think this is a pretty big thing, and I think it has got a bit of design behind it. So 2 stars design, 4 stars quality. I think my knockoff of the design is it's a bit boring still, but it's there are situations where you'll take this over not. I think it's actually more of a 2.5 star than a 2 star if I was going to be completely honest with you. But I do think it's going to be really strong. The other one is Groovin'. You regenerate 4 ammo per second while wall riding. If you're a big wall rider and a big Lucio damage dealer whilst you're on a wall, this is the perk for you. I suspect, though, you'd prefer just to take the more consistent 15% knockback on the sound wave. It's just better defensively. It's better for you protecting other people. And Lucio often is protecting some other major important part of the comp. So, yeah, It's fine. It does promote a different style, so I can't say from the design point of view that I hate it. I think it's pretty fine. It's just, it's going to be really hard to get the value from this. It's already pretty hard to aim for Lucio as you're on the wall, sorry. And just trying to, like, do I stay on the walls for longer to try and get more ammo to get more shooting? The juice might not quite be worth the squeeze on that one, so I gave it 2 stars design again and 3 stars quality, but it's another one where it's like, it's probably more of a 2.5 towards, like, the 3 side of things. It's kind of interesting, but I don't think the benefit is actually quite worth it. If it added just a tiny little bit more onto it to give you more benefit to staying on the wall, then suddenly it does change your playstyle of Lucio, like, considerably. So I think then I would be more inclined to give it a bit more design score. He's then got Noise Violation. Crossfade's range is increased by 150% while Amp It Up is active. That is what Lucio's old range, I believe, was before it got nerfed and tightened up. Lucio was really strong back then. He's really strong right now, so it's only going to make Lucio stronger. Are there situations where you're going to take this? I'm going to play devil's advocate and say, yes, this is a situationally good thing. If you're already playing a brawl comp, you don't really need the range, right? You're already all playing within Lucio's range. If you're playing a comp where someone wants to play off the death ball a little bit, then you could potentially crossfade, not to heal the whole, but to heal the single, right? And you just increase your range out so you can hit that person and basically selfishly heal that person. So I think there is actually some design intrigue in this. It does kind of look on paper boring, but when I think you really think about it, there's actually some multiple uses for this increased range at a very specific time. So I gave it 3 stars design and 4 stars quality. I think it's a really good ability. And the other one is Accelerando. This is the Frogger perk. This is the one he snuck in there when he was, attacking the systems with Emong, Cloudy, and Funny Astro. Lucio's attack speed is increased by 50% while Amp It Up is active, so you just fucking go crazy. Again, design choice is actually quite interesting because normally you amp it up for some sort of defensive or offensive reason. The offensive reason normally being, I want to close the gap and beat the shit out of this guy because they fucked their speed up and they can't escape from me anymore. Or they don't have speed so they can't possibly escape from me. So we're fighting on my terms. You don't get to decide. Now you could excel rando instead if you're on one of these flanks with like the Genji, for example, in this recent Hazard comp where you often took your Lucio and Genji on a flank to fight their Lucio Genji to try and get into their backline, unfiltered or unfettered, sorry. You could excel rando now, rather than for like necessarily speeding or healing yourself, just to give yourself the attack speed to give you the advantage in this 1v1 matchup. So I think it's really cool. Lucio 1v1ing Lucio is pretty boring. This certainly amps you up a little bit if that's the situation you find yourself in. So I'm kind of pro this. It's kind of interesting. Sure, I'm fine with this. 3 stars design and also 4 stars quality. I actually think both the mages are pretty strong depending on how you want to use it and what team comps you're in. If you're playing as a more concerted, like, brawly comp, I think the Excel Rando one is probably better because then you can actually do some more damage whilst your team is brawling it out and you're all playing together anyway. If people are playing a bit off shot, you take the noise violation so that you can hit out to those people that aren't quite in this central mass with you. Overall, though, I give it a C. Very solid C, but a C. Mercy, Angelic Recovery. Mercy receives 15 health per second while Caduceus staff is attached to a full health ally. When I first saw this, I was like, this is really cool. I actually like this. I was ready to give it like 5 stars design. And suddenly I realized I had to read this thing properly, and it just says when the Caduceus staff is attached. When I originally read this, I thought it was healing. I thought if you were healing a full health ally, it gave Mercy more self-healing, which I think is a really cool concept. It's basically like I'm going to sacrifice my teammates' survivability for my own survivability, which I think is very in keeping with Mercy, personally. So I was like, yeah, God, I'm kind of behind this. And then realized after the fact that Caduceus staff could also mean damage boost. So if you're damage boosting a full health ally, you get regeneration, which I think is a bit weird. Like, it just doesn't feel very in keeping with anything, so I'm not sure. It just feels like free value. And also, the health per second, 15 health per second, it's fairly minor, right? So, it is a minor perk. It definitely improves Mercy a little bit, but it's not by a huge amount. 2 stars design, 3 stars quality. Again, I'd rather it be that she was overhealing people, or if she's overhealing people, she gets a bigger amount of self-healing. I think that would actually be, firstly, actually probably stronger, but secondly, more interesting. She's also got Winged Reach. Guardian's Angel range is increased by 30%. Yeah, good on long maps again, so there is a design choice in this. Do I take this on this map? No, it's quite short range. I don't need the extra range. Do I take this? Yeah, it's Rialto. I need to be able to fly across the map, otherwise I'm going to get fucked at some point. Sure. I'm fine with this. It's pretty basic. It's kind of just, again, one of these things where it looks like just a pure buff on paper to an ability that they could have just done without the perk system. But there is some situational reasons why you wouldn't want this just to be added to the base hero, because you don't get any value from it. So, 3 stars design, 3 stars quality. Very situational, though. On the mages, there's Chain Boost. Secondary Fire links to second nearby ally. So this is the damage boost. You get to damage boost 2 people. Yeah, sure. Situation, again, very good. A lot of the times when you play Mercy, you're kind of often on your own little island, like as a 2 unit, while someone else is on the 3 unit. You could now, with your Mercy, be in a sort of 3-ish unit, or at least you're rewarded for that, because then you get to get your secondary fire to boost onto 2 people. If you can't be in that situation with your team, you don't take chain boost, so there is a bit of decision making there. As a result, 2 stars on design and 3 stars on quality. It's not just a pure outright buff to secondary fire. Also, we have Flash Heal. Resurrect can be used on Caduceus staff's active target to restore 150 health. Doing so incurs a 15-second cooldown. Really cool. I love this one. I think this is my favourite part of the kit, and actually one of my favourite perks in the entire set. You can trade your Resurrect, which is an extremely strong ability, for a big bump of health at that moment in time. Sure. Why let your person die and then heal them back up when you can just stop them dying in the first place? Especially if they're in a situation where they're in a position where it would actually be extremely hard to res because the opposing team could just rush over you at that point and kill you. I think it's a great choice, great decision. You might do this Caduceus staff heal, don't keep someone up, someone else dies, and then you wish you had to do your resurrect, but it certainly makes you think whether or not to use it or not. Equally, you might be like basically in your spawn, someone dies, it'd be better just to resurrect them back again, rather than just get the 150 health and risk them potentially dying. So there's a bit of decision making about this. So 5 stars design, 3 stars quality. The numbers might not be right here, by the way, but I'm content with the idea of the ability at the very least. So C overall again. You're gonna see a pattern soon. Moira, she has Vanish as a minor perk. Fade's duration is increased by 0.5 seconds. Isn't this a nerf? I'm not being funny, but I'm pretty certain this is a nerf. Have you ever played Moira and thought, I wish I could have faded further or longer? I don't think I've ever experienced that. Normally the fade duration as it exists right now gets me out of trouble, for the most part. And if it doesn't, I've probably fucked up to begin with, and there was no saving me. Fade lasting a bit longer, all it does is keep you out the fight for 0.5 seconds longer, which means you're healing 0.5 seconds less and damaging 0.5 seconds less, so it feels like it's just a nerf. Kind of a weird one, honestly, so. I've given it both design and quality 1. I don't think you'd ever take this. The other one is Uprush. Fade's jump height is increased by 50%. Sure, I like it. You can use it as an offensive tool rather than a defensive tool. You just follow your team up onto a high ground. You can be the diving Moira that just damage orbs people and one-shots them in the back line. Sure, I'm all about it. 4 stars design, 3 stars quality. Then there is the major perks of Ethical Nourishment. Biotic Orb's first 50 healing is instant on each ally it encounters. This is really interesting. I actually was really, struggling to rate this one in a design point of view. Because it's such a strong ability when you really, think about it. Because one of the weaknesses of the Healing Orb is you throw the Healing Orb through a group of people, and it goes through them, and it bounces off somewhere, and you never see it again. And you don't get the full value from your Healing Orb. Now, though, the Biotic Orb's first 50 healing is instant, so that healing all comes out, heals the guys that you want, so you're more likely to have the full Healing Orb drained on your first path through people. And that's fine, you got the full value from the Healing Orb. It's also worth noting that the first person it encounters includes Moira, so if Moira needs a big bump of healing, she has to use the Biotic Orb, but it doesn't heal that quick. You'd have to normally follow your orb around to get the healing, and you're right-clicking for sucking as well. She now actually has a burst instant heal itself. So, you don't always want to be throwing these damage orbs, Moira players. Sometimes this healing orb is going to be good selfishly for you as well. You'll get 50 instant healing on yourself, so I think it's a really, really strong ability. My issue with it and why I've only given it 1 star on design, which I think is actually kind of rude. Can I split this as 2 things? Can I split my star rating up? I think it's a really neat design, but I think it should not be a perk. I think it should just be in the base kit. That's my issue with this. Because it doesn't change how you would use it. It's exactly the same you would use the orb before. It's just making it better. But I think Moira is in a bad enough state right now that you could actually just put this into a base kit and give her a different major perk. So, yeah, that's kind of my criticism of it. I think it's really strong, and it's a really good thing for Moira. But I just wish it was in the base kit, not a perk. So that's my design criticism of it. The other major perk is Contamination. Enemies being damaged by a Biotic Orb receive 25% reduced healing. Again, situationally, this is going to be really good if you're playing Brawl v Brawl. Especially if you're playing Moira v Moira and you take Contamination and they take Ethical Nourishment. You're going to fuck them over because they're not going to be healing as much as you are. Because you're throwing out the damage orbs and you're spraying healing over everyone. So, yeah, I can see reasons to take this into certain comps, but it has to be some sort of death ballish comp that you're playing against. And probably since you're using Moira, you're going to be playing with it. So if you want to play Brawl v Brawl, sure, take Contamination. 3 stars design, and again, 4 stars quality. I think if you're playing this type of Brawl aspect, it really does push Moira forwards. I guess my other slight criticism of the Moira, perks is I think both the major perks work well in the same comp, so I think that has that against it. At the very least, the comps it works into, though, the Contamination one has uses that the Ethical Nourishment one doesn't really have. Overall, C. Zenyatta. Oh my god, it's the final hero. Holy shit, my voice. I can rest, I can stop speaking. Minor perk, Zenith Kick. Snap Kick's knockback distance is increased by 30%. Sure, why not? It doesn't increase the Zen's Snap Kick. Gives him more of a knockback, puts them back into his effective range. Zen doesn't want to be fighting people up close. He wants to be fighting them at mid-range. Maybe even a bit longer than that if he could force it. Because he's a very, very fragile boy. So, in design aspects, it has got some reasons to take it and not to take it. If you're up against a comp you don't think will get up and close to you, AK, if you're playing against another poke comp, why would you take this? So, because of those reasons, I've given it design 2, quality 3. I took a bit again off the design thing because it feels a bit boring as a perk. It's not terrible. It's a minor perk, so I'm kind of okay with it. Sort of ignore the low ratings on the minor perks. It doesn't matter too much because they're only meant to have a small impact on the game. For the Ascendance, which is the other minor, activate and hold double jump to hover for up to 3 seconds. Yeah, kind of interesting. On maps like Numbani first, you could potentially play Zen, and if a team starts coming up one side of the high ground, you could use this to get over to the other side of the high ground. It sort of eliminates one of Zen's weaknesses. I say eliminates. It minorly eliminates his weakness of no vertical mobility, no horizontal mobility. He can now have some horizontal mobility, and only gets the vertical one as long as he had the vertical to begin with. 3 seconds is not a long time either. I don't know how fast he can move during this, but my guess is he can go from like side to side of Numbani first. I'm not sure he could go from side to side in Gibraltar. I suspect that is too big a gap to jump. So situationally very good. I think situational perks are pretty good. So 4 stars design, 3 stars quality. Again, it's a bit of an issue with the snap tick. I don't think it's that situational. The situation is really just on, am I playing against dive? If yes, then this perk is pretty good. Major perks, we have Focus Destruction. Secondary fire charges 20% faster and can store 1 extra orb of destruction. I will say, I assume this means that it actually charges the same, right? Because I know it says charges 20% faster, but it puts 1 more orb in there. So I assume it's the same time for putting all the orbs together, because it's normally 5 orbs, right? So you now fire 1 additional orb in the same amount of time. It's kind of what this text says. It's just more DPS, right? Is there a situation where you'll take this over others? I guess, assuming the other perk, and again, this is not taking the perks in a vacuum, it's taking them in an atmosphere, I guess. If the other perk wasn't very, like, I'm keeping Zen up type of thing, maybe in a poke type matchup, you want to just have more and more damage. You want to be greedier and greedier and greedier. So, yeah, it has that situation, but it's again, it's one of those things that's a bit boring. It's kind of just a buff to the right click. The right click is pretty obnoxious anyway. It can do damage at, like, insane range and just one-shot people across the map. You're more likely to one-shot people across the map with 1 more orb, and it's just really annoying to play into as tanks, as you will just get giga chunked by a right click across the map. So, 2 stars design, 4 stars quality. Finally, we have Duality. It's actually quite an interesting ability to end on. Zenyatta heals Orb of Harmony targets for 20% of his damage dealt to Orb of Discord targets. There's a hero in Marvel Rivals, but I didn't play it long enough to actually put it to memory. I think it was the Frost healer, but I can't remember her name, so apologies for this. She has a similar trait, right? She put an effect on someone, and if she damaged someone else, they would get healed for like a percentage of the damage you dealt. Something along those lines. Or if they healed, they'd get a percentage of the healing back. That type of thing. This is kind of a similar gimmick, but as I said, for damage, where if you damage the Discord target, the Orb of Harmony target gets healed for a certain amount. This is actually pretty insane, honestly. And actually interestingly insane in certain matchups. Because you can just Giga Power a hero. Like, you could put this on your tank, put the Discord target on the opposing tank, and they can just go beat the shit out of one another. And your tank will always come out in the matchup positively, because you have Harmony, they have Discord, that already skews the matchup. But you're getting more healing from the Harmony as well than you would normally get. So it's really strong. You could make a hero incredibly hard to kill with this combo. So I'm actually kind of intrigued to see how this one works. From a design point, I think 4 stars, quality 4 stars. I think it'll be a really, really good combo, but we'll have to see it in action. Also, I think it's any damage, right? It's not just Zen doing damage to that target. It's just anyone. If it's just Zen, it's actually going to be pretty shit, I think, but I'm pretty certain it's any target, so it could actually be really strong. Bearing in mind, over discarded targets take more damage anyway. It's like 25% more damage, right? To get the healing on top of the damage increase as well. Oh, that's really good eats, honestly. And Zen always has been criticized for being a healer that doesn't actually heal that much. He's kind of more of a glass cannon, I deal a lot of damage. I've got a pretty good ult as well. Hero, so yeah, pushes Zenyatta towards a bit more single target healing, and yeah, I think it's an interesting perk. See overall, to end it off, like most of the other supports, we're done. That is every perk in Overwatch. I've rated them all with 3 rating systems actually. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if there's any particular playstyle or like comp thing you're looking forward to doing on Tuesday when the perk system comes out. I'll definitely be checking it out myself, so I'll see you then. Thanks for everyone that's watched through all of this. If you like this video, why not like, comment, subscribe? Why not also wish my vocal cords well, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!